Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for March 28th, 2023. Sorry it's coming out a couple days late. I spent the weekend in Anaheim and WonderCon, had a really good time, saw a lot of creators, talked to a lot of friends, but as a consequence of that, we weren't able to record at our usual time. So coming out a few days late, but it's a huge week. 14 titles we're going to talk about, and I think there's actually 15 or 16 individual floppies. I'm never a big fan when it's this many books out at once. I still think in a lot of ways DC's putting out too much content, but at the same time, I'm not going to say that there shouldn't be a Hawk Man or Hawk Woman title or a Green Arrow title or something like that. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to the fact DC's got a ton of characters, and some of the B-list characters deserve to have books once in a while. Firestorm's another one, doesn't have a book right now. Green Lantern doesn't have a book right now. It's crazy. I know it's coming, but when you have these weeks like this, it's just it feels overwhelming, and it's hard to really appreciate some of the stuff. And I feel like it kind of gets lost. But I guess it's a good problem to have in a lot of ways, because I think there are a
Yeah,
lot of quality stories here. But yeah, it's funny, like some of the long running titles that you would expect to be good, Detective Comics, uh, are some of the worst things out this week. So I don't know. What
yeah.
did you think about the week overall, Rocky?
Well, the thing is, when you have there's a lot of comic books came out this week for DC, but I think that the vast majority, I would say probably 99% of people don't read all of them that come out, like you and I do, and a handful of other sites. The reality is that if you're collecting the mainstream DC universe, there's probably 5 or 6 this week that you wouldn't read because it's not part of the mainstream. But then you got some out of continuity stories that you could read. You got a Waller versus Wildstorm. We're going to be reviewing today, which is Black Label, which you can enjoy and not read anything else. So there are ways most people who read comics sort of break them up. You and I are some of the few diehards that we actually challenge ourselves to read all of them. But I don't know. There's definitely an advantage to it. I guess we get. The advantage is that we get to read them all and stay current, and the disadvantage is that when some of them are really bad, sometimes we have to endure it. But it's all. Anyway, let's get
Yeah,
to it.
that's a good way to put it. We have to endure it, 100%. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if we weren't reading everything, if we were just focused on one particular sort of corner, we might have more time to sort of think about it and digest it and read it in context, and then maybe it would feel different. So anyway, that being said, let's kick it off. Blue Beetle Graduation Day, Chapter 5 or Part 5. Josh Trujillo is the writer. Adrian Gutierrez is the artist. Will Quintana on colors. Lucas Gattoni on letters. Got a chance to meet Josh in person finally at WonderCon, and he gave me a little, I guess you'd say, sneak peek. I already had the press preview, but I hadn't looked at it yet, of Jaime Reyes getting a new costume here. So that's really cool. I like what Josh is doing in terms of maturing Jaime. He and I talked about it at the show, how Jaime's always been a character where he continually makes mistakes and supposedly he learns from them, but then, he's kind of never maturing. He's never aging up. He's always kind of that young hero that's going to make mistakes. This guy's been around since Infinite Crisis, which, that's like 20 years ago now, almost. So, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you want to mature characters, you want them to grow and evolve, but you also can't have too many characters that are kind of up at the top, because then in terms of maturity, because then you have to create new characters to be that, to fill that role, right, of kind of the young hero that's learning on the job. And then you get some that are stuck in the middle, and we talked about that a lot with Young Justice, and where Tim Drake is, and Connell, and those Bart Allen from Impulse. It's like DC doesn't know what to do with them now, because so many of them have been replaced with yet another young generation. So it's a tough balance, right? As a creator, you want to tell a story and have a character arc and have the characters grow and evolve, but when it comes to Jaime, maybe not too much. He can't learn too much, because then he's not filling that role of young kid that makes a mistake. But you don't want to stay there too long either, because then it becomes stagnant as a character and it becomes boring. So it's a tough challenge, but I do like this issue. I liked how Jaime got a chance to sort of push back and call out, very veteran members of the Justice League and say, "Hey, I know what's going on here. You don't. You need to listen to me." And to their credit, the Justice League, backed him up at the end finally. So yeah, interesting to see what will come of this in the finale now that the Horizon has finally arrived on Earth. So um, as far as the art goes from Adrian Gutierrez, I felt it was a little looser this issue. Felt a little more manga influenced. Um, so just from my own personal preference, it wasn't as clean. I didn't enjoy it as much as previous art, but it's still very dynamic, and the color work um, by Will Quintana is fantastic. So, what were your thoughts on the issue, Rocky?
Well, I like that we finally got it spelled out a little bit more concisely. It's for the first time. It feels like that we are indeed getting a whole series of Blue Beetles. Because we seem to be dancing around the issue in the previous issues leading up to this. The previous 4 issues. We got Natita, Dynasties, Blue Beetle, and we got different colors of Blue Beetles, and they are the good guys of the Horizon, which are fighting against the Reach. And so this really is sort of DC's version of Power Rangers, but that's a good thing. And I think that maybe even explains DC trying to pick from various corners, having a little bit of manga influence on the art, fantastic colors by Quintana, which you already mentioned, and just some pushback on members of the Justice League. Jaime Reyes sort of coming into his own. This was an exciting issue. I like that he stood up to Batman, Superman, Flash, Cyborg. This was a really good issue, and the colors in particular really popped off the page, and even the Black Condor shows up. That was a huge surprise. I never expected to see Black Condor. The last time I saw him, I think, was on the Freedom Fighters, that was Venditti's Freedom Fighters, I think, or maybe I'm confusing myself. But in any event, it was nice to see Black Condor. It was definitely out of the blue. I guess if we can't get Hawkman, we can get Black Condor. I mean, a small consolation, but there it is. But this was, I think, the best issue so far. I like this. We're finally getting some action. We're finally getting the Blue Beetles coming, teaming up, and finally they fought each other when they first met, and now we got the Nantita Dynasties and Blue Beetle combining their powers as this issue ends with the Reach, with the starships of the Reach surrounding orbit around the Earth, and so. Is this? I'm not really sure. Is this it's the 5th issue? This is 6 issues, so we only got 1 issue to resolve everything, which I think is kind of disappointing. 1 issue to resolve. We've been building to this massive battle with the Reach, and we only got 1 issue to do it in, and I feel a little bit let down because I don't know if we needed that much of a build-up 4 issues leading to this, but. I'll take what I can get because this has been one of those series that has surprised me, and so I'm looking forward to how things wrap up, but knowing DC, this is the 6th issue will probably end on a cliffhanger leading into another series of some kind. But in any event, this has been one of the more pleasant surprises that DC has in store for its one of its more younger characters.
Yeah, learning that the Horizon is kind of almost a rebellion group within the Reach is interesting, and they're the ones that have arrived on Earth. So the battle with the Reach, in my mind, is still to come. So as you said, next issue would probably be more about an initial misunderstanding with the Horizon and a battle, and then eventually coming together to face the threat that is the Reach, and where that might take place, what miniseries, what event, who knows. Um, I mean, they could put it on a shelf for a year or two. It wouldn't surprise me. So, um, so yeah, all in all, an interesting series, and yeah, kudos to Josh Trujillo for a really really fun take. A lot of action, a lot of guest stars too. You got a chance to write Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, rest of the Justice League. So, all right, moving on. We have Batman Gotham Knight Gilded City Part 6. This is the video game tie-in. It's final issue, written by Evan Narcisse. Abel is the artist. John is the colorist. Steve Wan's on letters. Um, it sort of ends and sort of doesn't. I mean, it's an ending of sorts, but then you have the blurb continued in the video game Gotham Knights on sale now. So um, this is very much a prelude. We found out the identity of Runaway. it turns out that she's long lived. It's Vivica Fox. She's long lived because of the experiments that were performed on her by Vandal Savage, and it extended her life and her vitality. So she's even shows up in modern times to fight against Vandal Savage and alongside the Bat family as they're trying to take out this golden virus. So she's sort of the bridge that ties in the past story with the current story. I stand by what I've said throughout. The past story is set in the 1800s, 1840s. It's so much more interesting than what's happening in the current time. But again, it all ties into the video game, and if you're a big fan, this is going to add some context to it. It's sort of a prelude to the video game. I'm not a gamer in that sense, so for me, this is just sort of a standalone story that was interesting enough, but in the long term, I probably won't remember much about it because it wasn't that memorable, to be honest, except for the character of Runaway, which she ended up being a really fun character, almost um, an ancestor of Batman in a lot of ways. So, and the other thing I'll take away from this is Vandal Savage is a good villain, and I think he's underused. I think in the hands of the right writer, he can be a fantastic villain. But I feel like he's definitely underutilized by DC currently. So, what were your thoughts on this series, Rocky?
Just to build on your comment, Vandal Savage is notoriously undervalued by DC. There's no reason in the world why Vandal Savage shouldn't be the most intelligent, the most strategic, tactically superior villain or even character in the entire DC universe. I don't care what anybody says. If you're immortal, you literally have lifetime upon lifetime upon lifetime to get to correct your mistakes and do what you have to do to accomplish what you have to do. So my favorite DC stories, many of them involve Vandal Savage finally, finishing his plans, which are literally centuries in the making. And I always get frustrated when some Duke Ex Machina ending undoes Vandal Savage's plans. But I digress. Although this is a Vandal Savage story in a sense in and of itself. One little minor nitpick here. I guess maybe it's minor, maybe it's, but this is it Vivica Fox? What's her Vivian Fox?
I think it's Vivica.
Vivica Fox here. She first of all, the Runaway looked male for the entire series, and I guess she was a woman that dressed like a man. It was a man. It was drawn like a man. It looked like a man. It was a man, and then now all of a sudden the reveal is that it's a woman. It's really an artistic cheat, and it just rubbed me the wrong way. I mean, if it's a woman, then draw it like a woman. It just seemed rather silly to draw it like a man for all this time, and then suddenly it's a woman. It was an artistic cheat, and it really lacked verisimilitude to me. And but again, that's a minor nitpick because I do actually like the revelation. Actually, does make sense because Miss Fox was involved. She's involved in. She does have a same-sex partner back then, so she was sort of ahead of her time, and now she's also gained some degree of immortality or some degree of vitality that she can live longer and carry her into fighting the golden virus through the generations, which carries into the video game. So it does actually work fairly well. I agree with you that for fans of the video game, video gamers love action, and they don't have a lot of patience in my experience. Unless it's a video game, I don't see them having the patience to plod through the relentless, ongoing present day narrative that this 6 issues went through because it dragged on too long in the present day, and it didn't really serve. The past story, the story in the past, the origin of the Runaway is far more interesting. Plus, it leads to we literally have more than one runaway in the present. It's literally a group of runaways, literally called the Runaways, all dressed and looking the same. And there's some potential here. Unfortunately, it does end on somewhat of a cliffhanger. And I question the degree to which there really is that overlap between comic books and video gamers. But we did have, DC has done that before with its Batman Fortnite with some degree of success. So maybe the jury's still out on that. And that's an audience that DC is still trying to court. So we shall see. But overall, it's not a bad story. But as a comic book reader, a little dissatisfied with its abrupt ending because I'm not going to play the video game. I'm not a video gamer. And maybe if you're a video gamer, you might want to check this out. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it adds context and richness to the game. So up to you if you want to take the dive. Okay. Up next, Stargirl and the Lost Children, number 5. Jeff Johns is the writer, Todd Nauck is the artist, Matt Herms on colors, Rob Lee on letters. We saw last time that Our Man supposedly is the villain, but then right away that's changed. Hey, he actually works for someone else. Who it is, we don't know. But there was a pretty good wrap up or recap by Jeff Johns in the last issue that sort of continued. Um, and there's a fantastic double page spread early on in the issue with a bunch of headshots from all the different lost sidekicks by Todd Nauck. It's a fantastic page, tons of detail. And I love that we're getting the names of all these characters. You know, really kind of an old school thing to do in a comic. And so kudos to Todd Nauck and Jeff Johns for doing that. As far as the story goes, I'm still in. It's still interesting to me, but it does start to feel like it's being a little bit repetitive. It's like, okay, they're on the island, they're fighting against the childminder. A childminder seems to be ready to sell these kids or trade these kids to somebody else. Who's the big bad? It's starting to feel like it's dragging a little bit to me. But you know, again, I'm in. It's fun, even if it does feel like it might be dragging a little bit. The mystery dragging out. I'm still in because the art's fantastic, the colors are fantastic, and it is fun. So if I start to get a little bored at all with the pacing being a little slower than I would like, I just look at some Todd Nauck line work and a beautiful Matt Herms colors, and I'm happy. So I'm still in on this. It's a lot of fun, and getting to see these young characters who are sort of lost in time develop their own personalities is a lot of fun. So one issue to go. This also doesn't feel like it necessarily can be wrapped up in one issue. So where it might go from here, what the next chapter is for this. You know, we had Flashpoint Beyond, we had New Golden Age one shot. Now we've had this series. It doesn't feel like Johns is done. He's certainly continuing some of the seeds planted in those other 2 books in the current Justice Society run. We know that's been plagued by delays, which is really frustrating because there's multiple artists on it. But I feel like there's got to be more Stargirl coming at some point. But then again, we had the Stargirl Summer Special that was like 3 years ago that it came out, which directly led into this. So I feel like there's more to the story. There probably will be a sequel to it, but it may not be for a couple of years. So in the meantime, I'm just enjoying this for what it is. But yeah, I can't, as much as I love Jeff Johns and Todd Nauck, I can't let him off the hook for some slow pacing. So I guess in a way, I'm glad next issue is the final issue, so I can kind of get the conclusion to this part of the story. On the other hand, I'm not glad that it's going to end because I really enjoyed this series, and it's great seeing Todd Nauck's art on a monthly title. So, what did you think, Rob?
Well, compliments to Todd Nauck, like you said. I mean, we get a double page spread with all those heads with all the names on it. I mean, this is fantastic. I mean, if we should be grateful, because if it was Ed Brisson or Matthew Rosenberg, we wouldn't know the names of any of the characters, and we'd be guessing still. I'm being a little bit of a jerk when I say that, but I will say that this was very slow paced. This is the second issue in a row by Johns where I'm disappointed. Frankly, although who am I to be disappointed with all these characters, right? There's a lot of characters here, and you know what? I'll forgive the snail pacing of this issue because we get some character moments. That's what Johns is really doing here. We get some character moments where finally some of these kids don't get along with each other, and they shouldn't get along with each other. I mean, how can all of them get along and all fight for the same common goal? Surely there's going to be some dissension. We finally see a little bit of dissension in the ranks, some arguing. Stargirl, tells a couple of them to smarten up. We got a common goal to fight toward, et cetera, et cetera. Our Man shows up. He appears to be on their side, but he's referring to an owner. So apparently the Our Man scolds the childminder, saying, why did these children have escaped? Where are they? The owner's going to be upset. Who is the owner? I suspect we're going to get to the end of issue 6, and we still might not know who the owner is. I suspect all that's going to happen by the end of issue 6, these kids will all be sent back to their time, and that'll be it. And then we DC readers, all we will know is that in the DC's past, we can expect now that essentially things that are rewritten, and these kids now are going to show up in past stories, and their future generational selves or the future whatever their offspring will end up showing up in the mainstream DC universe, and people will point to this series as establishing these characters having previously existed. I think that's all that is. This is a way to shoehorn in these characters in the DC universe in a way that could justify new characters moving forward. And hey, you got to do what you got to do, and Jeff Johns is really good at that kind of thing, and that's what we're getting. And we got great Todd Knock art to do it. But as far as the central mystery, what is this island? How did the kids get there? We really don't have any answers. I mean, these characters are interesting, but in terms of plot, this is a fairly loose plot, and I'm disappointed in that aspect of it. But you know, I got to be realistic. I don't know if Johns could really pull off a miracle with this many characters with only 6 issues. I mean, so I got to cut him some slack in that regard. But I really do wish this was another 6 issues more, just so we could get some more of that Jeff Johns storytelling and Todd Knox art.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but yeah, sounds like we're both on the same page as far as it just kind of dragging. Because you're right, we will get a resolution to the story, but how many answers can we really get in one issue? Which goes back to what I was saying about, yeah, it feels like there's got to be another chapter, but with John's current pacing of comic work, again, it could be 2 or 3 years before we get it. So a little disappointing, but anyway, moving on to a story that does wrap up completely, if not bleakly, but what do you expect from a Tom King book, right? Gotham City Year One, written by Tom King. This is part 6. Pencils are by Phil Hester, inks by Eric Gapster, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Clayton Cowles. This is a masterpiece. Tom says it's a favorite thing he's written. I can see why. He's such a fan of pulp and crime noir, and that's exactly what this is. And much like a lot of those classic movies from the 30s and 40s, crime noir, it doesn't end necessarily on a hopeful note or an upbeat note. Some people that have done some really horrible things end up coming out ahead. There really are no innocents. Everybody's tainted. Everybody has made poor choices. Everything's sort of in a gray area. And I just found this to be a masterpiece. It was so good. I talked before about whether or not Tom might get some pushback on sort of sullying the good name of the Wayne family, royalty in the city of Gotham. And certainly when you talk about the choices that his grandmother made, while you can understand them, it's sort of hard to agree with them. It's certainly hard to applaud them. She doesn't make choices that are necessarily morally good, but you can understand why. She's human, she's flawed, she's as susceptible to the baser impulses of jealousy and anger and what have you as any of us. But the story certainly didn't put the Waynes in a good light at all, and also an interesting choice for Tom to tell the story as narrated by Slam Bradley, who obviously was one of the main characters here. So I really enjoyed this. It doesn't say that it's Black Label, so technically this is in continuity, but again, it kind of contradicts some things that have been said previously about the Waynes and the Wayne family. So how much people actually accept this as canon and how much they choose to ignore it remains to be seen. We won't know that for a long time. But I thought this was a masterpiece. It was so good. What were your thoughts?
Well, yeah, just to be clear to people here, what this says, I don't think this. I would have no problem if this became continuity and sort of erased some of the, to the extent that it contradicts previous continuity. It really is not that big a deal. This I mean, for people that have a conniption fit over this, I mean, it doesn't harm in any way, shape, or form Thomas and Martha Wayne. Okay, it's the grandparents. It's Thomas Wayne's parents, who weren't that great of people. Thomas's mother was a manipulator and a jealous woman because Thomas's father was having an affair, and ultimately he arranged the kidnapping of his own daughter, Helena Wayne, and Helena Wayne accidentally choked on her own vomit and she ended up dying tragically. And they ended up making it look like she died of other means. And there was a bunch of manipulation and they set up Slam Bradley. And so, yeah, Grandpa and Grandma Wayne are really bad. But Thomas and Martha Wayne are still wonderful people. And this basically ends with Helena Wayne was the older sister of Thomas Wayne, who died. And then after this, you know, they had another son who became Thomas Wayne, who was the father of Bruce Wayne. That's really it. We got the origins of Crime Alley, which I thought were pretty good. We got some Gotham City history, which was amazing. I thought Tom King made Gotham City feel genuinely like a city that had a life of its own. We got a sense of the evolution of Gotham City from a city that could have been a better city, evolved into a better city, but for reasons which are explained throughout the 6 issues, you can get a sense of why Gotham evolved in the manner it did to become the darker place that it did, which it's not Tom King being dark. Gotham City's been a shithole for a long time. Newsflash. This is him. In fact, you can't think of a better writer to maybe, frankly, tell this story. So I think this is excellent. If this is going to be in continuity, that's fine. I mean, that's fine. It doesn't taint. Anybody out there who's all upset that Grandpa and Grandma Wayne are tainted, please. Go drown your tears in tissues, as if you cared about the father of Thomas Wayne. Come on. This is an excellent series, excellent story, very well done, and I will defend this story against, most of the, finally we get a little bit of background of Gotham City prior to the Waynes. This is something that, quite frankly, I would love to see if this was put to the screen, or if they're going to have, they always have on their CW network some Gotham offshoot of Gotham, instead of the garbage that they're putting on CW. Actually have some backstories like this that would it would really attract an audience, because this is crime noir at its finest. And again, Tom King just hit it out of the park.
Yeah, it's hard to overestimate just how good this is, and especially it's titled so appropriately, Gotham City Year One. This is, you look at, I mentioned the Wayne family is sort of the royalty of Gotham, and then becoming so tainted by the choices that Richard and Constance make here, right? Yeah. So sort of the beginning of the end, the beginning of the innocence of the end of the innocence of Gotham. And we talked a lot about that, how false that innocence was, right? How it was built on sort of a fascist police force and heavy-handedness. And so really this is almost Gotham City starting to become true to itself, but really the beginning of the Gotham City that we know. So it's also extremely appropriately titled. So kudos to DC, Phil Hester, fantastic job on art, and yeah, Tom King, obviously, just perfect ending. So, all right, really curious about your thoughts on this one, Rocky. Up next, Harley Quinn number 28. This is the first Tinny Howard issue. Sweeney Boo does the art and colors. Steve Wan's on letters. And then there's a backup that's done by Erica Henderson that sort of feels like, what was the point? But anyway, what were your thoughts on the main story?
Well, first I want to talk about the art. Sweeney Boo surprised the heck out of me. Straight up, I was very surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. First, let me complain about the too many bloody variant covers. Good grief, man. DC. Anyway, but you know what? I'm going to be a hypocrite. I'm going to complain about too many variant covers, and then I'm going to say that some of them are pretty damn nice. Jenny Friesen's was pretty good. There's this little Harley in the Land of Nightmares cover. I don't know who, I don't know why they don't put their full names on these covers somewhere, but I think it's a Sook cover. Ryan Sook's cover looks really amazing, really great. There's some really nice covers, which I'm showing on the screen here. So yeah, shout out to the amazing variant covers, even though we have too damn many of them. But as far as the story itself, it's called Girl in a Crisis Part 1. Now, Tinny Howard we've gotten a lot. We've got Harley Quinn screws up the DC universe. We've had Harley Finn fighting the Harley who laughs. We've had Harley in a lot of like crisis level sort of events told in an attempt to show them humorous manner. And this is the same sort of thing. Sweeney Boo's art, I really like it here. Teenie Howard's story is it's really off the beaten path. Like it's Harley Quinn, and I know I sound like a broken record. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. I almost feel, am I justified in even criticizing a Harley Quinn comic like this, because it's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be off the wall. Is it even a legitimate criticism to say that how can this be in continuity? It's Harley Quinn. So, all I know is it's I'm not really a big Harley fan. I prefer a darker Harley, a more evil Harley, and one that would be in the mainstream DC universe. We're never going to get that, and I have to accept that. This is Harley Quinn, I guess petting her two pet hyenas, having a dispute with Two-Face, and then she ends up at the end being confronted out of the blue by Lady Quark, Lady Quark of Earth 48, who literally pops out of nowhere. And the last time I remember seeing Lady Quark for me was way back in the original Crisis. And apparently now she's claiming that Lady Quark is a member of the royal family of Earth 48, and they patrol the multiverse. And Harley, apparently Lady Quark, her family is more powerful than gods. And apparently Harley has the power to access the multiverse now for reasons which are not really explained. And she ended up with this fish. And I don't even know how to explain this story. This is really, really wacky. And it's really, really wonky. This is really, really out there. I don't get it. And I didn't find it. It's not that I didn't find it funny, but I guess I didn't really find it funny. I found it silly. But I find most Harley Quinn comics silly as opposed to funny, because humor is very hard to pull off in comics. I say that with respect to all writers. And, this didn't really do much for me, to be quite frank. Although I want to give compliments to Sweeney Boo's art. It's really good. I think it's definitely suited for, I thought it was suited for Harley. And there's something different about the art. People who were turned off by Riley Rosmo's art, by all means, I think you can come back. I think you'll enjoy this particular style. It's probably more to people's liking. It's less stylistic than Riley Rosmo's was. And there's a backup here that, frankly, I wasn't a fan of the art. The backup is by Erica Henderson. And I remember Erica Henderson, I think, of Squirrel Girl fame. And I actually read, and I actually own and bought the first 27 issues of Squirrel Girl. The reason why I know that is that I just finished bagging and boarding them, because I was doing that a couple of weekends ago. And so it's funny, I'm not a huge fan of Erica Henderson's art, but it kind of grows on you after a while. So in any event, this is meh for me. What do you think of Harley Quinn? I don't even. It's just not my cup of tea. But I do. The art was okay.
Yeah, the art was interesting. Sweeney Boo definitely has her own style, and seeing this sort of well-dressed, slick-looking, for lack of a better word, Italian-looking Two-Face, who's concerned about his shoes as if they were like, Gucci shoes or something. It's an interesting take.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed the art, even though, this isn't a look Harley has had previously, not a look that Two-Face has had previously either. And Tinny's bringing back the Jackals, Lou and Bud as well into the main continuity. So there feels like some elements of classic Harley here, and the zaniness of classic Harley is back, right? We had a sort of a more grounded Harley with the Stephanie Phillips era, where she was still crazy in a lot of ways, but there was kind of a stability that was sort of inherent there that she seemed to be starting to assert. With the Tinny Howard era here, we're back to the completely zany Harley, which normally I don't really care for, but for some reason this really worked for me. And I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of the throwaway lines that Tinny gives us here, like when Harley's talking to her two henchmen, and they're saying, uh, our fee has to include the costume rentals. It's a gig economy. Um, we got to advocate for ourselves. Big villain will chew us up and spit us out. It's just kind of meta and really fun. And that was at that moment when I kind of was pulled in by Tinny. I do agree that some of the stuff seems out of the blue. Harley being able to pull objects from other parts of the multiverse, like that fish that you mentioned. But it's all to the good, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's unexpected. It's a different sort of Harley Quinn. Um, and Tinny, actually, when I was at WonderCon on the Dawn of DC panel, she talked about getting Harley back to basics a little bit to some extent with kind of her insanity. And so it feels like it might go back to that way, which again is so strange to me because that's not really a Harley that I typically enjoy. But I think what made it work so well for me was this Sweeney Boo art, because from the line work to the colors to the page layouts, it was really interesting. I mean, the last person I would expect to see, and you kind of alluded to this, is Lady Quark in a Harley Quinn comic. Well, why? Who said Lady Quark is
Yeah.
part of the royal family that's policing the multiverse? Like, where does that come from? But it works. It's interesting. Lady Quark's a character, again, it hasn't been used enough. I mean, she was so bitter in the original Crisis, right? She was the only survivor of her world, and she was just
Oh,
angry. Couldn't wait to take it out on the anti-monitor. She was so mad. Um, and so, taking that idea and twisting it a little bit is really interesting. So, I won't go so far as to say I'm all in on this, but this issue really, really worked for me. And again, it was a good match of, I think, the kind of the zaniness that Tinny's going for matched up perfectly well with the art and the colors by Sweeney Boo. So more than anything, I think that's what really impressed me and pulled me in. Um, was that the tone of humor, the type of humor. I mean, the fact that that Harley gets sentenced to community service by teaching psych classes at a community college. I mean, that's a great setup. That's a setup that's rife for humor. Um, but it's not just humor for humor's sake. The humor's a little smarter, and maybe that's at the end of the day why I enjoyed it so much, because that's the kind of humor that I tend to enjoy, as opposed to you know double entendres and sex jokes and whatever. That's just kind of the lowest common denominator, potty humor or what have you. This is a little smarter than that, so I really appreciated it. And again, I can't say enough great things about the art. As far as the backup, I agree with you. I said as much. Like I don't know why it's here. It has its moments. I thought the art by Erica Henderson was okay, but it didn't. I mean, other than the one panel of seeing Harley smashed into the ground by this giant monster that kind of steps on her, I didn't find it particularly amusing, with the exception of that one panel. So yeah, I just thought the backup was meh. Won't be something that I'll remember. All right, up next, I'm really curious about your thoughts on this one as well. Dark Knights of Steel #10, written by Tom Taylor. Art is by Yasmin Putri. Colors by Arif Prianto. Letters by Wes Abbott. Last issue, we saw that the Alfred Pennyworth character that we thought we all knew as the traditional Alfred Pennyworth character is actually John Jones, Martian Manhunter. And in this issue, we learn who the big bad of this story really is. So, what were your thoughts?
this I feel this whole thing's wrapped up so quickly. I realize that it's only 12 issues long, and so I guess we kind of know that things had to have started wrapping up quicker. But for some reason, I was really kind of hoping that I wish we could have spent a longer period of time dealing with the inner workings and the machinations and the politics of this new land that Tom Taylor has created, because it wraps up so quickly. It's so convenient. All of a sudden, everybody knows it. Nobody's at fault. Everyone knows now that, oh, well, you know what? We were all wronged. We were all deceived. Now we're all going to band together. And by the end of this issue, pretty much everyone knows who the villain is, and everyone knows everyone's going to band together. And it's too convenient for me. I wanted this to be more messy. I wanted because there was so much cool setup for so many machinations and misunderstandings, and more of a Game of Thrones thing. That was really the thing. And I know, uh, as a reviewer, many of us as reviewers, when we say Game of Thrones, we maybe overuse that term, but everybody knows what we mean. Game of Thrones is a high standard, but there was potential here for that. I think it's been squandered. This being basically just green Martians, white versus white Martians. White Martians are the bad guy. White Martians had taken over Alexander Luthor. It looks like the White Martian has a Green Lantern ring, which maybe adds to his power a bit. So this is really the Earth against White Martians. And meanwhile, all the various kingdoms the kingdom of storms, the kingdom of King Al, all the monarchs, Hippolyta, all of them, all their armies have come together, and they were warring against each other. And then all of a sudden, Kal-El shows on the scene, and despite all the machinations, Batman shows, the Dark Knight, shows up. Even a grieving Diana over the loss of Queen Hippolyta. All of them. Despite all of that, everyone calmer heads prevail. I would have liked to have seen the opposite. I would like to have seen unforgiveness. I would like to have seen some of them not embrace the better angels of their nature, but to embrace the darkness. I would like to have seen that, and I'd like to see this go for another 12, 24, 36 issues. But having said that, this is going to be a very convenient wrap-up. And because this is issue 10, 11, and 12, I'm sure we're going to have everything conveniently wrapped up. And I know I don't know if, am I giving an underhanded compliment? I think maybe I am, because I want Tom Taylor to get to the point sometimes and give us, because we do get some good character work here, but I actually want more plot. I really, there's so much greatness in the plot here that we're not going to get because of just convenience of wrapping everything up. And far too much of this issue was spent on the origins of the White Martian. We already know the origin of the Green and White Martian, and sadly, he's pretty much duplicated exactly the origin of the White and Green Martians that we've seen in every other iteration of Martian Manhunter. So there was literally nothing new about that. That was disappointing. There was no wrinkle there, and maybe this is Tom Taylor. He's an amazing writer, and I'm holding him to a higher standard, but I know that he's better than this. But I realize he only has 12 issues, but I was expecting more. So maybe I'm being too harsh on Taylor, but I was expecting more, and this just felt a little bit too convenient and a little bit too, lovey-dovey, everything sort of conveniently wrapping up and putting the chess pieces in place far too soon for my liking. But what do you think? Oh, sorry, you're on mute there, buddy.
Sorry, I think I enjoyed it a lot more than you, which is interesting because I think throughout you've enjoyed this series more than I have. So first of all, what I'll say is, as much as Tom Taylor is a great writer, and we saw what he did with Deceased, which ended up having, I think, 3 or 4 series, it's always a risk, right? Whenever you do something like this, let's take the DC heroes and villains, put them in a medieval setting, and see what happens. Can kind of look at what he did over at Marvel with the Dark Ages series, which didn't sell that great. So I'm sure that the editorial minds at DC were kind of like, well, let's give him a 12 issue and see what happens. But we're going to want a complete and contained story. And so, if I have to nitpick something, and you kind of touched on it, the pacing in this is really inconsistent. It starts off, and the pacing is actually really quite slow, and we're getting some really strong character work, some really in-depth look at the world that he's created in terms of the the L's ruling, taking over from the Waynes and the human kingdom. And then as the story goes on, the pacing picks up tremendously, and again, it gets a little uneven, and it starts to feel a little bit choppy, like we're skipping over some things that we shouldn't. And there are people that are acting out of character. I mean, it's easy to go back with the knowledge we have now. Hey, White Martians, shapeshifters, and what have you. You'll go back and read it once it's all said and done, or I'll go back and read it once it's all said and done, and I'll be able to recognize. Okay, that's when Kal-El was being impersonated by a White Martian or what have you. So it makes a lot of sense in that way, but it doesn't stop it from feeling choppy and feeling at the end like, okay, it started off slow, the pacing has gradually built up, but we're skipping over so many rich story points, which leads me to my next point, which is that, yeah, very similar to what they did with Deceased, but then Deceased was so popular, you had other miniseries, including the one that's going on right now, whatever it is, Undead Gods. So I expect 100% there's going to be more Dark Knights of Steel, which may, explore this world more. We may go back, we may go forward, we may see some things tangentially. We could have a series from Luther's vantage point, how he was duped by the White Martians and what have you. So I fully expect, based on the success of this, that that's going to happen. Um, Now, whether or not this White Martian origin needed to be shown, because you're right, it's very similar to every White Martian story, Martian Civil War story we've ever had in continuity, which is interesting because Taylor could have taken it in any number of different ways, like he has done and has taken liberties, whether that be turning Alfred Pennyworth into the Spectre, or here Alfred Pennyworth is John Jones. Like, they're both by Tom Taylor. I love it. Like, let's
Yeah.
let's give Alfred some love. I miss him in the main DC continuity. So the fact that he chose to keep it the same, I don't know that I would call it lazy, because it works. It's one of those things where, well, how do you really improve on it? It's sort of perfect the way that it is. Whether or not it needed to be shown here, is up for debate. I feel like there are so many people that jump onto Tom Taylor books that only read Tom Taylor books or aren't aware of the White Martian origin. I mean, you think about it, White Martians, Grant Morrison story. There's another telling of the Civil War, very classic. But that's JLA. That's late '90s, right? I mean, that's almost 30 years ago now. So you may have a lot of people picking this up that aren't familiar. Again, it goes back to you and I. We're DC heads. We know the history and what have you. So I didn't mind it being retold here, because it was done in a quality way with the narration of Alfred Pennyworth, John Jones, Martian Manhunter, whatever you want to call him, with his context, with the emotionality of losing his race and being the last one left of the Green Martian. So I didn't mind it necessarily, but I can see your point. We could have gotten other things in that space, in that real estate, but I expect there to be more Dark Knights of Steel, and so I'm sure we'll get a lot of those stories. But at the end of the day, this world that Tom Taylor has created, Dark Knights of Steel, much like the DC universe, it's like, if it's this popular, honestly, as much as I'm saying, DC's putting out too much content, Taylor, you don't have time to write it. He's created worlds within the DC universe or DC multiverse where any writer can now go in there and tell a story in there. Like, I frankly, I'd prefer to have a kind of a deceased anthology as opposed to Batman Brave and the Bold that's coming out, that's replacing Batman Urban Legends, or even a Dark Knights of Steel anthology where you're telling stories in this world, and like, it's a rich, right, it's a rich tapestry, and you have less creative restrictions because it's not in the main DC universe continuity. So rather than having another Batman anthology with more Batman stories, I'd rather this. Not to say you couldn't tell Batman stories, right? um, so I get it. I understand where you're coming from. You kind of want this world flushed out a little more. I don't disagree with you. I think it's just a matter of, at the end of the day, a matter of bandwidth for Tom Taylor. But I 100%, I would be shocked. I would be shocked if DC doesn't come out and announce another Dark Knights of Steel. Probably a 6 issue is my guess. Could be digital first. Could be, who knows, series of one shots. Who knows? They will do more Dark Knights of Steel, because we both know there's no way this story wraps up. The universal story wraps up. You might be able to wrap up this smaller little conflict between the White Martians and the Green Martians, and how the White Martians have tried to pit these three kingdoms against each other. You could wrap up that storyline, which, we didn't even talk about that. That's a very good use of the White Martians. I didn't necessarily expect there to be White Martians, and so that was probably another part of the reason that I didn't mind having the retelling here, because it's such an inspired way. Like, we were speculating who's the big bad. With the Green Man, we were thinking Kryptonite, we were thinking Luther. Just the way everything played out, I thought it was just
Yeah.
brilliantly done by Tom Taylor. And really, the idea of these white Martians, they're so duplicitous, right? They're so deceitful, and so that's why they ended up being the perfect choice for everything that has taken place so far. So kudos to Taylor. This particular issue has been my favorite issue of the series so far, and this issue has made me like the whole series more, because of the context it provides for the earlier issues. So I'm more on board with it now than I was, which is so interesting to me because it feels like this was one of your least favorite issues. So
Well, no,
interesting.
well again. I just feel that I just wanted a little bit more. This one just felt a little bit kind of tropey and predictable. I was just hoping for some more twists and turns, but I think I was maybe being unrealistic. But the positive thing is that we have a brand new. It's its own universe, and future writers can play in the sandbox created by Tom Taylor on Dark Knights of Steel. So we can always. There's going to be this story and many more to come, I'm sure. Like you said.
Yeah, 100%. All right, up next we have Sandman Universe Dead Boy Detectives #4 from writer Pornsak Pichachot. Javier Rodriguez is the guest artist. Jeff Stokely does the pencils on page 24. Craig Tallier does the inks on page 24. Miguel Muerto does the colors on page 24. The rest of it's all Javier Rodriguez. Hassan Otsman Elhau does the lettering. I have to admit that I enjoyed this series, or this issue, for kind of what it was as a standalone, but I'm still struggling a little bit to put this all together. What exactly is happening here? But I think that's on me. Sort of a byproduct of the fact that we are reading so much stuff, and I had a hard time. Like, I felt like the first 2 issues of Dead Boy Detectives, I was on board. I understood what was happening, and I just got lost somewhere along the way in issue 3. And because I think I didn't have a good grasp on what happened in issue 3, that kind of feeling of being lost continued in this issue. But I don't think this was a bad issue. Like, individually, the framework, the structure, the events of this issue did make sense to me. So I think it's just on me. I need to go back and read issue 3 and then come back and read issue 4 again, because I enjoyed some of the things that happened in this issue. I just didn't know that I had necessarily enough of the context for what was happening. And shame on me. I saw Pornsak, had a drink with him while I was at WonderCon, and I forgot. I should have picked his brain. I should have been like, "Hey, let's talk a little Sandman Universe Dead Boy Detectives." But I mean, it was in the context of a lot of other people were there as well. Not that I couldn't have had that conversation with him, but I honestly just didn't come to mind. We were talking about this, but I totally should have. But yeah, it's not like I can't have him come on the show to explain. Hey, explain your book to me. But anyway, last thing I'll say is I thought the Javier Rodriguez art was really strong. Um, can't remember who the regular artist has been. I remember their art being a little esoteric and kind of spooky, which sort of suits the style of the story that's being told. This art is a little more traditional, and that's just where my proclivities lie. So I actually enjoyed this art more than the previous 3 issues. So anyway, what were your thoughts?
This was I was confused this issue. I was like you. One of the and I'm going to be. I'm not going to be quite as polite as you, or rather, I'm not going to be as self-effacing as you. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm going to put some of the blame on the writer, on Pichachot, on Pornsak. Now, the one thing that the most interesting parts of every issue was each issue we get an origin story of one of the dead children, because it's the dead boys. Basically, this series so far, if I was to oversimplify it, and I mean really oversimplify it, the 2 dead boy detectives, Charles and Edwin, meet other dead children, and there's a mystery surrounding it, and I'm really not sure what that mystery is. I'm not. I just don't know what that mystery is. But we here in this issue, we get the origin of one of the other children, Sonny, who was killed by a stalker when his family came to America. And because they came to America for Thailand, and the telling of that story is interesting, and each one of these children has a very interesting story, and they almost have a story that's grounded in some degree of tragedy and bigotry and prejudice and racism, and there's there's a tragedy to that aspect of it, but that the central narrative, the magic around this, and I don't get it. I don't get it, and I don't remember. Like when I read this issue, I really didn't even remember aspects of previous stories to catch on to what was going on here. So I'm not sure. What I do remember, what I think is more interesting, is that Charles and Edwin and Dead Boys, they both kind of are attracted to Tanya. And Tanya is what they call a knack mother. And anybody who falls in love with a knack mother is cursed. So Charles is cursed. And that's why Charles' face throughout this issue is all scarred, and it looks like he's decomposing. It's horrible. So that's kind of interesting to me. But the larger narrative as to what they're looking for, I'm just plumb. I forgot. I would really have appreciated a summary. As a matter of fact, Pornsak even tries to give a summary at the beginning. He gives a summary at the beginning, and it still wasn't enough for me to clue me in as to exactly what was going on. And it's unfortunate, but in any event, this is absolutely something, as a warning to people, you absolutely have to read. Wait for the trade. Straight up, wait for the trade, because I'm sure. I'll be blunt. I'm pretty sure even if I read this as a trade, I'd have to go back and read the previous pages. It would still be something I'd have to go back and remind myself, because I kept my previous notes, and I'm looking at previous notes, and I'm still sort of I can't articulate myself well enough in explaining exactly what the plot line is here. So people wait for the trade on this one is my recommendation. But again, I think it's rewarding. I like the Dead Boys, but this is a more difficult story to follow than in any previous Dead Boy iteration that I've read, because I've got I got a nice little Dead Boy collection going back more than a few years. So in any event, not bad, but I still like the art. I like the kids. I like the characters. I just wish the plot was a little bit more easy to follow.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that we might be having some trouble, neither Rocky nor I are very familiar with Eastern horror myths and tropes and legends and what have you, especially Taiwanese, um, or Thai. I guess it's not Taiwanese, would be from Taiwan, but Thai from Thailand. And so he has spent, and fine, no problem. He's spent some time. He spent some page real estate explaining that at the expense of kind of some story, which might help explain what's going on a little better. But again, that might be on us. Not necessarily saying it is, but it could be.
Yeah.
All right, up next, the debut of Unstoppable Doom Patrol, issue number 1, from writer Dennis Culver. Chris Burnham is the artist, Brian Ribber on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. Different sort of take on the Doom Patrol. We have the female chief. We have Rita Farah, Elastigirl, Larry Trainer, Negative Man, Robot Man, Cliff Steele, very reminiscent of kind of the TV show with their outfits. A new character called Beast Girl, and they talked about this at the Dawn of DC panel at WonderCon, how Beast Boy made his debut. A lot of people associate him with the Teen Titans, and rightfully so. That's where he spent the majority of his sort of comic book publishing career. But he made his debut with Doom Patrol. So as kind of an homage to him, Dennis Culver was saying that, they decided to create a Beast Girl. She doesn't have any sort of shape-changing powers or anything. She does kind of look like a monkey squirrel demon thing, because she's got a big fluffy squirrel tail, but kind of looks like a monkey, but she's furry like a squirrel, but she has these like goat horns, so God only knows. But her powers have to do with inducing the fight or flight reflex in somebody. So those are your 4 members, or 5 members rather, of the Doom Patrol, and we learn about their mission early on, so to speak. This is basically sort of a direct sequel to Lazarus Planet in a lot of ways, because this version of the Doom Patrol is out there looking to help metahumans who have gained abilities because of the events of Lazarus Planet, Lazarus Island erupting, and what have you. and keep those metahumans from being exploited, ending up in Suicide Squad or ending up as villains or what have you. And so in this first issue, they're in Gotham City, even though they know that's going to bring them into conflict with Batman. Um, they want to help the metahuman whose sort of powers are out of control. And of course, Batman does show up and say, "This is my city. You guys need to get out of here. This guy belongs in Arkham Tower." And I love what the chief says. Yeah, when has Arkham ever helped anybody? Amen to that. 100%. We've talked about it even on the show. How why would you even name it Arkham Tower? So dumb. Arkham is just synonymous with insanity and chaos and bad things. Um, and so the Doom Patrol does go and recruit this guy to be part of their team, I guess. So in a lot of ways, it reminds me a lot of classic X Factor when it first started. Um, Although they were sort of trying to masquerade as mutant hunters, and that was a whole thing. But that's what this kind of reminds me of. Like, are these, sort of villain of the week or metahuman of the week characters going to end up as sort of at a Doom Patrol kind of school or academy or what have you, as like minor supporting characters, kind of like Leech and Artie did back in the day. Boom Boom's another one in that X Factor title, like I said. Also, we know that the Peacemaker, there's something going on with Peacemaker here. He says he soon will know all the secrets of the new Doom Patrol. So what exactly that's has to do with, and how Task Force X's espionage unit, which that's the first I'm hearing of Task Force X's espionage unit, like how that all ties in, we'll have to wait and see. But really fun issue, fantastic art from Chris Burnham, very much his style, very recognizable as his art, great color work. And then we also saw some members of the Brotherhood of Evil, classic Doom Patrol, and also, to a lesser extent, Teen Titan villains with the Brain and Monsieur Mala and General Mortis. But it seems like the Brain meets his end at the foot stomp of Mala. But that was a bit of a surprise to me to kill him off so early. But it's comics, bring him back at any time. But anyway, this was a lot of fun. I haven't been a big fan of Doom Patrol for the last few iterations. Last time I think I really enjoyed it was, God, I can't remember who wrote it, but I just remember that fantastic Steve Lytle art from the Doom Patrol in the 90s. But like the Grant Morrison stuff where it got like super weird and out there with a living street as a character, a member of the Doom Patrol, like that's just that's a bridge too far for me. I can't wrap my head around that. Like, how can you have a street that can't move or whatever be a member of a superhero team? That doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, I did enjoy this, and the art was fantastic. So, how about you? What'd you think?
Yeah, I love Chris Burnham's art. It's really good. I found it. I thought it was a good setup issue. This was a really good introductory issue. It set people up to it introduces us to the Doom Patrol. I mean, and that's what you want. And it's a good introduction. I mean, those people who might come in from watching the series, they're going to come in. You got Robot Man, Negative Man, Elasti-Woman, this new chief, and this new Beast Girl. The chief is, of course, Crazy Jane. I'm not really, I found it kind of comical that Crazy Jane is leading the Doom Patrol because, I mean, she's got all these multiple personalities. I found it funny. I mean, she's arguing with the Batman. Batman is actually trying to say with a straight face that Arkham Asylum is a good, is a better place to house crazy people than any place else. I mean, I'm trying to think. Here's a quiz for you. Can you think of a single patient at Arkham Asylum that was ever cured? The closest that you could maybe come to is Harley Quinn. But if you think Harley Quinn's cured, I got a bridge I could sell you in New York. I mean, come on. Nobody has been cured in the halls of Arkham Asylum. And so it makes sense that the Doom Patrol, I think it's good that Doom Patrol really is DC's X-Men. And there was a time early on, before the X-Men got really super popular, where the Doom Patrol was considered was the X-Men done right. Doom Patrol is a really great concept, and the idea that Doom Patrol has taken on all these people that may have been adversely affected by the Lazarus resin or Lazarus rain or whatever, and that they're the de facto, mutants of the DC universe. I think that's good. I don't really care if it's kind of imitating the X-Men a little bit because good. good. It's if you're going to copy something that's good. And so I'm looking forward to see what Dennis Culver does with the concepts here. I do think it's a little bit, you know, it's kind of a little bit. Again, a little bit tropey, but I kind of like the Mala, generally Mortis, and the brain getting into a battle, and Mala crunching on the brain's head, because we know that's leading to something. How is that going to lead into? How is that connected to Task Force X and the Peacemaker? The Peacemaker. How is he going to get involved here? So we've got three moving parts to this story, and it's not very obvious how they're all going to come to a head. And I like it. I like it. This is something different. It's got its own characters. It can have its own. It's not directly connected to other comic books in the DC universe, so it can legitimately have some fun and play with the characters without screwing up continuity, which is kind of my pet peeve. So I kind of like this, and I'm really interested to see where it's going. And I'm prepared to give Dennis Culver a lot of rope on this. I just hope he doesn't hang himself.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, Tim Drake Robin. Feels like a standalone story, to be honest. Starting off the new arc, I guess. There's a guest artist. I don't know if he's taking over it because it doesn't say guest art, but Riley Rosmo's have been on it previously. But still written by Megan Fitzmartin. Serge Acuna is the artist for this, at least this issue. Lee Lardfridge on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. Basically, Tim Drake and Bernard go on a date. Firefly shows up. Apparently, he's angry because nobody ever lets him dine at any of their restaurants. You know, maybe it's because they're worried you're going to set the place on fire, dude. So what does he do? He turns around and proves him right by setting restaurants on fire. Meanwhile, Bernard's parents show up. They have a little bit of a tiff, if you will. Obviously, they're not happy with the choices Bernard's making. So in that way, it's a little bit relatable. We know, and Rocky and I both gave credit to Bernard for, realizing that, and it seems like he's known for a long time, that Tim Drake is Robin. And for as smart as Tim Drake is, the fact that he doesn't realize that there's no way he could fool his boyfriend that he's spent time with as both Tim Drake and as Robin. Like, dude, you wear a little tiny domino mask and your voice is the same. Like, how could he not realize it's you? So kind of interesting. Some seeds are planted here for some storylines going forward. A lot of it kind of interpersonal relationship stuff. There's very little actual hints of where the story's going for Tim Drake as Robin. But again, it's only the first issue of the next arc, so we'll have to wait and see. I enjoyed the Serge Acuna art. I don't know, again, it's hard to tell based on where this might go for Tim Drake in the costume. So hard to say whether Acuna might be the long-term answer. But it is a more traditional superhero style than what we get from Riley Rosmo. So yeah, I thought this issue was okay. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. Probably average, to be honest. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out from here. So what are your thoughts?
I actually had to. This was the one where I had the biggest worries about reviewing this particular comic because there is so much wrong with this comic. I don't know where to start. Boy, could I go on a rant. Aside from the fact that this has to be one of the worst written comics in a very long time. This is poorly paced. At one point, Tim Drake and Bernard are actually walking away from the restaurant, which is on fire behind them as people are burning inside the building. And Bernard is talking about how heroic Tim Drake is, but eventually they end up having to go back. Sorry. They end up having to go back because Tim Drake realizes, oh my God, Phobia was there. And Phobia is the reason why Bernard's parents spoke so badly to Bernard. Because Bernard is a victim. I mean, you got to remember that. Bernard's been portrayed like the victim. Bernard has no self-esteem. He's got no self-worth. I'm afraid I'm afraid to go. It's dangerous to walk outside alone at night, but I got Tim to protect me. I can't make my own hotel. I can't make my own restaurant reservations. I got Tim to do that. I always have Tim to protect me. I'm very insecure, but I've got Tim to show me the way. He's a stage 5 clinger, Bernard. This is a guy who's taken biology and chemistry in hopes of being a chef one day. I finally figured out why Tim is attracted to Bernard, because that's one of the questions. one of the things that's bugged me about Bernard is what's the attraction that Tim has to Bernard? I can't figure this out. Now, it's obvious to me that it has to be a sexual element. There's an attraction there, but there's nothing else. What else is there to like about Bernard? Now, the funny thing is about it is that Tim actually tries to come up with a reason why he might respect Bernard at the end, and he tells Bernard, "Well, you stood up to your parents. You're a good person, et cetera, et cetera." But the fact is, Bernard is a person who is in deep need of counseling. This guy is really screwed up in my mind. But you know what? Maybe Tim is too, and that's why these two get along so well. I'm still not clear why it was never made clear why his parents. Why Bernard left his parents. I'm assuming it's because he came out and they don't like his sexual orientation. I don't know. It's never overtly said. I'm guessing that's not really made clear. And so there's even a scene where they go into the restaurant, and as they get into the restaurant, Tim suddenly has to go to the bathroom, and Tim walks away, and then Bernard actually says out loud to everyone else in the restaurant saying, "Enjoy your pee." This is actual dialogue in the comic book. This is cringy stuff. This is cringy. Suddenly, then Firefly shows up, like you said, attacks, and Phobia's around. You find out later, which causes Bernard's dad to say some really cruel things to Bernard. Which you're left wondering: did he really mean that, or is it because he's just a bigot in order to make Bernard look more like a victim because he's gay, and maybe his parents don't like him because he's gay? It's all these mixed signals and then they leave. Tim runs away. He dresses up like Robin, then comes back, fights Firefly, goes back, changes back into Tim Drake, takes Bernard. They leave the restaurant while it's on fire. His parents are still in the burning building, and it's actually a scene. You can see them. You can see they're walking away from the restaurant with it burning behind them. and then Bernard mentions to Tim. And Tim thinks, phobia. Oh my God, phobia must be there. So then they go back to the restaurant where naturally people are still inside, still burning. Their parents are still tied up. And so then Tim goes back, dresses back up as Robin to fight them again. And it's just a mess. And then it ends. It ends nice. It ends with Bernard giving Tim this necklace with the bee on it, which obviously stands for Bernard. So there's some nice moments here. So for those that are into their relationship, there's nice moments here that you'll get that. But honestly, I don't understand what Tim sees in Bernard really, because Bernard is a very deeply insecure individual. And to defend and I know I'm on a rant here, but I want to defend my position here by saying this. I compare this to Jay Nakamura, John Kent's boyfriend. Now, Jay Nakamura, I've criticized him. I called him the pink-haired freak at one point. But I will say this about Jay Nakamura. Jay Nakamura is a hero. He's hardworking. He's passionate. He cares about. He's a freedom fighter. He's someone that you can respect, and he's shown his own agency and his gravitas. Bernard doesn't do that. Bernard has only been portrayed like a victim throughout this entire series, and thank God Fitzmartin had him finally say that he knew that Tim Drake was Robin, because Bernard has been an idiot for this long. To wait 7 issues. To reveal that Bernard, finally this issue, it's revealed that Bernard knows that Tim Drake's Robin. Thank God, because at least he's not a complete moron. But in any event, I was just astounded by this. But I will say this: people who are, this series has been canceled. I'm not surprised, and I don't think anybody who's been reading it has been surprised. And as I said, I wish I could be more polite on this, other than to say that I'm sorry for people who have been reading this, because they like the message with the relationship and everything. But this is this just failed for me on multiple levels, and but hey, that I'm done ranting now. Okay, tell me.
Sure? You didn't like it.
Yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea, no.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I think we've been on the opposite sides of this book since the beginning. So
yeah,
I find it interesting. Like and I can't really argue that the pacing was great, because it was a little, but I guess I'm kind of looking at it as the bigger picture of what Fitzmartin is trying to do with the series, and I appreciate that a lot. But yeah, I mean, it has its growing pains. I wish it hadn't been canceled, because I think it just needs a little longer to find its footing. But it's tough. It's tough these days with kind of the editorial assistance you get, or maybe I should say non-assistance. Like, I think a good editor on this book could make it a lot better. But anyway, let's move on. Action Comics number 1053. Main story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, art by Rafa Sandoval, colors by Matt Herms, letters by Dave Sharp. And then we have the second story that's written by Dan Jurgens. The art in that one is by Lee Weeks. We've got Elizabeth Brightweiser on the colors and Rob Lee on the letters. And then the final Power Girl story written by Leah Williams. Marguerite Sauvage is the artist, letterer Becca Carey. So what were your thoughts on the main story? We saw last time Metallo taking some Blue Earther activists, I guess we'll say. Terrorists might be a better word. And kind of using his abilities to infect them with kryptonite and turn them into drones, so to speak. We see the fallout of that right at the beginning of the story as they're attacking John Henry Irons. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, writer Philip Kennedy Johnson. I think he's doing a good job developing this story. Metallo is he's more powered up because of because Lex Luthor utilized the War World tech, and through the combination of the Orphan Box and some other War World tech, Metallo's more powerful than ever, and actually created his own little mini gang of Metallos, which he's used to attack the Superman family. Metallo is under the impression. That Superman has done something to his sister, and that's because of Lex Luthor's machinations. And somebody else seems to be in control of Metallo here, and it's even Lex Luthor seems to be unaware of what's going on, because Superman confronts Lex Luthor in this issue, telling him, "Look, what did you do to Metallo? And what's this about his sister?" And who's the voice that Metallo is talking to? And then Lex realized, wait a minute, you said Metallo is talking to someone, because obviously Metallo's not talking to Lex. And so if Metallo's not talking to Lex, who is he talking to? So somebody is manipulating Metallo, and they're doing it in the vision of Tracy, his sister, and so clearly something is going on here that we're not really sure exactly what's at play, exactly how Metallo is being manipulated, but I'm definitely very curious, because he's very, very powerful, and he did a lot of he injured Connor Kent in this issue. Became injured. I think it was John. I think it was no, it was a Kara. I believe it was right.
Yep.
Kara Supergirl was badly injured, and I like some of the John Kent has a good talk with the twins. John Kent, you can tell John Kent is maybe a little bit jealous of the super twins of Ossel and Othel, or Otho and Ossel, because they're younger, and they're at the age where John Kent was, where he was robbed of those years because he was in the volcano with Ultraman, and it's interesting to see, they have an interesting talk about the puzzle box, because on War World, Superman built a puzzle box for Ortho and Ossel, and they still have it. And John Kent remembers the one that his dad made him. And so there were some really nice character moments there. But it's funny, because Ossel confronts John and says to John, why are you upset? And because they sense that maybe John's a little upset. So there's some good character moments there that Kennedy Johnson does a good job on. And I thought this issue really, I thought it worked very well. And I'm really invested in the story that Philip Kennedy Johnson is telling. So what do you think?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, we know, if you listen to my chat with Philip Kennedy last time he was on, he mentioned the fact that Joshua Williamson was extensively using Luthor, and so he couldn't use him as much as he might have wanted otherwise. So we sort of knew that whoever was masquerading as Luthor, or maybe Luthor as AI, was really behind everything. So that interaction between him and Superman was really interesting. I also really like how he's following through with the dynamics of the Superman family, both in terms of their interpersonal stuff. You touched on it. John can't. He's a good kid, right? Like he can't be raised by Superman and Lois Lane and not be a good kid. But he's also human, he has those feelings of jealousy, but he's aware enough to recognize them, and he doesn't hold them, like, against the twins. He's like, hey, it's just, I missed out on so many things that you're getting to have. So there's a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of envy, but he recognizes those negative feelings for what they are. He tries not to let them affect him. But how can it not, right? How can he not look at them? They're of the age that he was when he was, when he was kidnapped or held hostage, or however you want to put it, by Ultraman. So I enjoy that, but I also enjoy the interpersonal dynamics of the Superman hero team. You see how upset Connor is by Kara being damaged. You see, or injured, damaged, whatever you want to put it. Even Keenan Kong, he's ready to start exacting revenge, and it gives Philip Kennedy Johnson the context, the opportunity to give us a great Superman moment. When Keenan is like, we should kill Metallo, because we're risking our lives, and he would kill somebody as as noble as John Henry Irons or Supergirl. And Superman's like, we have to do the best that we can, because if we don't, then these people die as villains. And redeeming villains, redeeming people who've made mistakes or poor choices, that's how we save the world. Like, great Superman moment, great Superman line from Philip Kennedy Johnson. Probably, honestly, the line that he's written that explains his philosophy on Superman the best of anything I've read so far. And he truly gets who Superman is. That line really shows that. So I enjoyed this issue. The art for me is not really working as well as it could. Again, when I said Rafa Sandoval, when I heard Rafa Sandoval is going to be the artist on this, I was like, oh, I'm fantastic. He had such a great run on Green Lantern with Robert Venditti, but this just doesn't feel up to his same style. It feels a little darker, a little more muddy, not quite as clean or dynamic. That being said, the final page where Otho rather is in her sort of super family outfit and attacking the Blue Earthers. Obviously not a good choice, and obviously an impetuous choice, kind of one you would expect from a tween, to be honest. Not a good look though. Not a good look for her in her choice, but a great look from Rafa Sandoval in that splash page. She just looks powerful and cool. So really, really awesome. The second story, it felt like it dragged a little bit, honestly. We got a lot of Lloyd, the Doombreaker. I'm kind of with Rocky on this, that I don't really feel like he's the best character. Derivative of Doomsday, feels a little bit cliched and tropey. We did get more of the princess and John Kent, a young John Kent, and it's sort of what I was saying last time about who knows if this princess is in the right, or if the people pursuing her are in the right. John clearly wants to play the role of hero, savior, protector, however you want to put it. But is he actually in the right? We don't know. But much like Otho in the first story, he sort of takes matters into his own hands and looks before he leaps. So showing his inexperience as a young person with powers as well. So how that all is going to play out, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But where the second story really shines is the Lee Weeks art, man. Lee Weeks is one of the best artists, one of the best storytellers working in comics today. His art is just fantastic. It's so nuanced. So for no other reason than his art is fantastic, would I recommend this story. Like, I don't need another reason. The story's interesting enough, even though, like I said, it feels a little bit cliche so far. But man, read this for the art, if nothing else. So what were your thoughts on story number 2 here?
I did. I really enjoyed it. Dan Jurgens' writing, I've enjoyed it, and I'm not a huge fan of Doombreaker, but I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of young John Kent interacting with this Princess Gleanna of Ploon as they're being returned to her homeworld to stand. She's being returned to her homeworld to stand trial for treason, and of course John Kent will have none of it, and of course wreaks havoc on this alien ship, and it ends up at the end on the final page crashing down towards the Earth, which I'm sure next issue will be rescued by his dad, who will show up to save the day. But I really like the idea of John Kent. I mean, he's sort of smack dab in the middle of things, and and this Princess Gleanna sort of figures out that, oh my God, you're the son of Superman, so you're like a prince. I kind of like that. It's like, yeah, the prince and everything else. As a matter of fact, I'd really like to see John Kent and maybe an older Princess Gleanna, as John's older now, with Gleanna returning. I think that that's what I love about these types of stories is if we can expand upon the years when John was younger. There's potential for for new present day stories with new characters that are new to us that we've just been introduced with the past stories interacting with John Kent like we're getting here. So I really enjoy it. And Lee Weeks Art, like I said, is just fantastic. I just love how he draws Superman. He draws such a mature looking, sort of cool, awesome, almost like a movie star quality to how he draws Superman and in that black suit and standing out in the field as he's standing on the alien ship, wondering where his son is. He can't find him, but he tells Lois, "Don't worry, he's going to be okay. I'll find him." And there's something in the way I imagine Superman saying that. Yeah, I know. I feel everything's going to be okay too. And there's an innocence and a vibrancy about a young John Kent who's overconfident. John Kent should be more scared than he is, but he's not. I actually think the Princess Gleanna appreciates the dilemma that they're in more than John Kent does. John has an over amount of confidence in his own abilities, which is exemplified by the fact that he tries to take out the entire ship by himself, and he ends up doing more harm than good. Literally, it's going to be crashing into the Earth, but will likely be stopped by his father. But anyways, it's just really great. I really, really wish we'd get an extended story. Selfishly, I wish that was the main story. I wish that they had his own comic. I really do wish that Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks would be given their own comic book, and with a full 30. If I'm going to be paying $4.99 or $5.99, give me 36 or more pages of just Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks, if I could have my way, because I quite enjoyed it.
Well, what about the final story? I know you haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of giving Karen. I guess we shouldn't even call her Karen. Power Girl. Mental powers. And Marguerite Sauvage on art, Lee Williams writing. So, what were your thoughts here?
Well, this continues the story. Look, I made no bones about it that this is something I have to get used to. Okay, so I don't want to sound like a broken record. I don't like the idea of Power Girl as a telepath, but it's established now. But I'm going to try to focus on the positive here. Lee Williams is really trying to put Power Girl on a different path. And one of the things that Lee Williams is doing that I think, well, I have some mixed feelings about. Being positive about it. I asked this question in the two previous issues, and that is, what the hell does Power Girl have to do with the Superman family? Well, it would appear that Power Girl has also asked herself that same question, and so has Lee Williams. And the fact is, it is an issue with Power Girl. She has been, it was established, even though it's not been in continuity. Apparently, Superman has, as John Kent tells Power Girl in this issue, my dad has invited you to family functions. You're the one that decided you didn't want to come. And Power Girl reveals it's because she's got feelings of abandonment. And she's just going to lose her family. And it's the reason why Power Girl is not close to the Superman family is apparently because of Power Girl. It's not because the invitation wasn't there. And I guess that's fine. That's not really true given what we know of continuity, but whatever, I'll go with it. If that's the case, if Power Girl always felt outside the Kal-El family, then why is she wearing a new suit that has the family crest and everything. So there must be a part of Power Girl that wants to be part of the Superman family, because she is kind of wearing their coat of arms, and so there must be a part of her where, despite what she's saying, there's I think her costume says one thing, that she wants to be part of the Superman family, but her actions betray what she's actually wearing. So I kind of like that in a way. It shows the tension and the interworkings of what Power Girl's struggling with, wanting to be part of the family, but not allowing herself to, because she feels like she's from another Earth and she's always felt a little bit off. Power Girl gets a name change here. Now, she was always Karen Starr. And Power Girl, very interestingly, she thinks that while she calls her previous Superboy, John Kent here, keeps referring to her as Karen. She says, "Don't call me that. That was just basically a name that I made up. It was just the identity I created." So it was an identity that I thought was fairly serious. She had it for well over a decade, I believe. She became a billionaire before she went off to Earth too. I thought it was more than just a name, but apparently it wasn't. And she ends up giving herself a new name with John Kent. John Kent, I'll give Lee Williams credit. Lee Williams portrays John Kent here as just like his father, very kind and compassionate. John is very compassionate and kind to Paige here, to Power Girl, and he the character, what is it? Owen, or what the character's name? Omen, the character Omen, the redheaded character Omen, who's the other telepath teaching Power Girl how to use her telepathy. She calls her PG, or PJ calls her Peach for short. And apparently Power Girl doesn't like being called Karen, but she liked being called Peach. So John Kent said, well, instead of calling you Peach, I'll call you Paige, as if turning a page, turning a new leaf, turning a page on your new life. So Power Girl likes that, so she goes by Paige. And then, so there's a lot of dialogue here again, too much talking heads for my liking, but there's a bunch of computer code in John Kent's head that has to be unscrambled. And it ends up that Johnny Sorrow is the one that has been intentionally manipulating the minds of Kara, Supergirl, and John Kent, all with the idea of trying to bring some sort of attack on Power Girl for reasons that we don't know, but it's ultimately revealed that Johnny Sorrow, the JS, does stand for Johnny Sorrow, which was guessed by one of the people that commented on our site. And I just killed a spider. In any event, not bad. Marguerite Sauvage, I thought the art here was... it had to grow on me a bit, but she has to visually draw what's going on in the mind of John Kent, and I don't actually think it works as well as I wish it did. I'm not a fan of the telepathy. I really, really don't like these adventures playing out on a psychological plane. I think artistically, it's too difficult to draw something in an interesting manner, and I still find this to be the most boring of all the stories, and I really hope it picks up at some point. But it's at least mildly interesting. So I don't know. What do you think about the Power Girl story?
Yeah, it's kind of growing on me, to be honest. Just because it's such a unique take, right? Like, because I sort of agree with you. Like, man, mental powers, Power Girl, whatever. But at the end of the day, she is so derivative in terms of um, her basic look. So derivative of Supergirl, and her power set, so derivative, right? I mean, yeah, they gave her the boob window. A lot of times she's drawn with, large breasts, whatever. And that's seems like that is sort of going away, and she's being drawn with more realistic proportions, which makes her even less unique. And I'm not saying necessarily it's a bad thing, because certainly, we don't want it to be exploitive. But like, what's the unique part of Power Girl? She's just a Supergirl clone. So giving her these powers, and maybe changing her name or whatever, it's an interesting take. There's a little part of me that's like, yeah, but you're discounting continuity in a way, but that's a small part of me, because like we were saying at the top, you have to evolve these characters, and I think there's a lot to Power Girl, but only a few creators seem to get it right. Like Jimmy and Amanda's run, I love way more than I like their Harley Quinn run. Um, but those are few and far between. And oftentimes I feel like the reason she's neglected, the reason we don't have more stories with her is because she is so derivative of Supergirl. It's like I can't ever really remember there being a Supergirl and a Power Girl in the same book, like in the same book on the same team. Like, why would you? They're the same. But what Leah Williams is doing here does feel different. So I give her a lot of credit for trying something different. Whether or not it'll work in the end remains to be seen. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. As far as the art, I kind of go back and forth. I kind of have mixed feelings about that as well. Marguerite Sauvage art from one panel to the next. Look at one particular image. Look at the colors. They're all beautiful. They're gorgeous. But her transitions from panel to panel, the actual storytelling part of it, it's not the strongest. I talked about it when we reviewed the Future State. Was it Superwoman of Tomorrow? I think it was called.
Yeah.
How the images looked like images from a children's book. Where you have a big chunk of text and a picture that goes with that text, and then the next page another chunk of text and a picture that goes. The pictures don't necessarily need to tell a story from one page to the next. They do here, and don't get me wrong, this is head and shoulders better than what that's been, and this is the longest I've ever read of her. Now that we're on the third issue, ever read of her doing sequentials in a row. So maybe she wants to flex that muscle. She is getting better, but it's still not up to the level of some other artists. So maybe it's not fair for me to make that comparison, but I can't help but notice that about her art when I see it, because again, it's so gorgeous, especially in color work from one image to the next. But yeah, the transitions could be stronger. So all right. Up next, we have Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #2 from writer G. Willow Wilson. Art is by Cian Torme and Emmanuel Lupacchino. Colors by Jordi Belair. Letters by Pat Broso. We get Shazam drawn into this conflict. We see him meet up with Yara Flor. He's fighting. Does it say where? I guess Fawcett City.
Philadelphia. He's in Philadelphia. Initially, he's in Philadelphia, and then he makes his way to Washington because he's told to go to Washington to meet somebody.
Yeah, right. So you're right. He's in Philly. He's there. He's fighting, with these monsters that the gods have sent, fighting against them alongside Mary Marvel. When he's transforms back into Billy because he feels drawn to Washington D.C. That's where he meets up with Yara Flor. And eventually he's going to be pulled into this conflict and go to Olympus to fight against the gods. And when he's there, there's the wizard Shazam, the one that gave him his powers. We know he's been infected by the Lazarus Rain. Apparently he's a villain now. And he basically says he's going to take Billy's powers. So you would think Billy would turn back into a kid, but no, instead he's still Shazam in the adult body, just all emaciated. And what will become of Shazam and Wonder Woman? Well, I'll find out in Lazarus Planet Revenge of the Gods #3. So it's a fast-paced issue. There is quite a bit of action. I feel, man, Cian Torme's art is usually so dynamic, but maybe it's a combination of him with Emmanuel Lupacchino, whose art is also usually really good. But together, it didn't work for me. And maybe it was the muted colors. But the art was only okay for me. And it's Jordi Belair on colors, right? I mean, you get 3 super talented creators and you would think, yeah, they're going to knock it out of the park. But I don't know. The art just felt inconsistent to me. It's so dark. And for this type of story, fighting against gods, I want it to be bright and vibrant and pop off the page, but it just doesn't. It's almost like the Yara Flor effect. Anything she's in just feels kind of meh. So I don't know. At the end of the day, like we said when we reviewed the first issue of Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, can't Lazarus Planet just be over already? Ugh, I'm done with it. But anyway, what were your thoughts?
Well, I've actually, this has potential. I mean, I ripped apart the first issue here of Lazarus, Planet Revenge of the Gods. But I mean, look, I mean, the idea, whatever, the idea of all these gods getting all pissed off and they want revenge on humanity and they want to, whatever, they want to enslave humanity to make them fear them and then convert the fear into worship. And because fear is equivalent to worship in their mind, and that'll empower them up. And it's not just the Greek gods, but it's all the gods. That's not a whatever. Okay, I'll go with that. Now, but I'm going to go on another mini rant here. Now, my rant now on this issue is going to be about Shazam. Now, I guess my first question is, how old's Billy Batson? Now, I'm not going to fault writer J. Willow Wilson for this, because I don't know. Did somebody tell her that Billy Batson's 10 years old? How old is Billy Batson in this issue? I have no idea. I get the impression by the way he's talking, because he's so impressed to see, oh my God, there's giants. Giants, actual giants. He actually looks like he could pass for a 6-year-old in this one panel. How old is Billy Batson? Also, now, and he also, Mary Marvel is his older sister, and she's smarter than he is. He is. I'll just say it. Billy Batson is. If he's 10 years old, he's acting his age. If he's 17 years old, he's an idiot. He's the dumbest 17-year-old out there. Shazam has no. Where's the wisdom of Solomon in Shazam? Shazam is humiliated by Yara Flor, who, by the way, is a bitch in this issue. Complete bitch. Billy Batson's told to go. The hooded figure that showed up on Themyscira, the hooded figure that saved Wonder Woman on the cliffs of Promethea. The hooded figure shows up mysteriously while Billy Batson is making his way to Washington, where he's supposed to meet somebody. He's told he's supposed to meet somebody. He doesn't know who it is, but for some reason, when Shazam sees Yara Flor, he assumes that it's Yara Flor he's supposed to meet. And Yara Flor, it's so hilarious. He goes, I can't believe it. Hoodie guy was right. You found me. And she very arrogantly says, have we met? And he goes, no, I had a vision. And she goes, Yara at one point says to him, I don't even know your real name. You're a guy in a suit who looks like he's more used to playing a hero than actually being one. Really? This coming from Yara Flor. Now, does Yara Flor, has she never met Shazam? Okay, maybe she hasn't met Shazam. I guess she wasn't around. I thought they met during Dark Crisis. But that aside, does she really not know of Shazam? Is this the first time she's met Shazam? Because it certainly seems that way. And she's a complete bitch to him. And Billy is, Billy actually, and he's got no self-esteem, no confidence. He's Shazam, for God's sakes. He goes, oh, that's fair, but I'm stronger than I look. My powers come through the gods. I can help. I mean, he's so emasculated. And it's just, what is it about men when they're written in these titles of Wonder Woman titles that they're just completely emasculated and they have no agency of their own? It's actually comical already. And so Yara Flor takes him. Even Hera thinks Shazam is a joke. The Wizard chose Billy for a reason. He was worthy. Shazam is powerful. Shazam is more powerful than Black Adam, has defeated Black Adam on multiple occasions. Shazam has the soul of a child and the wisdom of a god. He's not to be trifled with. But he's made to be a joke in this issue, and that just really drives me crazy. And Yara Flor is written as if she's got more experience than Shazam. Give me a break. And of course complaining that she's called Wonder Girl. Anyways, but let me tell you what the positive is. Okay, aside from that, the Wizard shows up. The Wizard shows up and he strips Shazam of his powers. Now, I'm not sure how that is, because with Zeus dead, how can Shazam have the power of Zeus if Zeus was killed by Hera? Because the Z in Shazam stands for Zeus. Zeus is dead. How can Shazam still have the power of Zeus if Zeus is dead? I don't know. There's so many questions about how the Shazam powers work. I don't know. How can the Wizard... I didn't think the Wizard could unilaterally take the powers back, but apparently he can. Is that because of the Lazarus reign affected the Wizard? I don't know. So I got some questions here. It's a little bit wonky, but you know, I that's my rant. I just want a little bit more empowerment for Billy Batson. I think that the wisdom of Solomon should have maybe he was stripped of the wisdom of Solomon, but I don't know. What do you think of it? You
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Billy comes across as very young and very inexperienced, which shouldn't be a thing, but yet it is, and it's almost like it's the inexperience that he shows, the inexperience that he has in the story as it's written. It's almost like it's there to kind of prop up Yara Flor. That doesn't work for me. Yara Flor hasn't earned any like respect or experience or what have you, but that's kind of how it feels. So honestly, I'm just ready for this Lazarus Planet and storyline to be over. And really, we're not even talking about Lazarus Planet anymore. The fact that it's Lazarus Planet is sort of tangential. Really, the only tie-in is the fact that the wizard Shazam does, is evil, is the bad guy now because of the infection by the Lazarus magic or whatever you want to call it. Really, we're talking about ending this Wonder Woman story, Hera, blah blah blah. That's gone on far far too long. We both know that it has. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, Punchline, the Gotham game, number 6, from writers Tini Howard and Blake Howard, Gleb Melnikoff and Max Raynor, the artist, Luis Guerrero on colors, Becca Carey on letters. Yes, this is our third Tini Howard issue this week, right? Like we had Harley Quinn, and no, I guess Catwoman was last week. So
yeah.
anyway, second Tini Howard issue. So and this is the end. This is the end, right? And it doesn't really feel like an end. And we're told that Punchline and the Royal Flush Gang will return in the pages of Catwoman. So how do I feel about it overall? I guess at the end of the day, it sort of worked. Punchline does have a confrontation with the Joker, which I feel gives context to their relationship. Punchline does feel more like kind of her own character as opposed to being a Joker derivative, the way that she started out. And so that was a good scene. I think it was necessary. I still don't care for the Joker. I still don't care for Punchline, but she is her own character. She's not a Harley Quinn ripoff. She's not a Joker ripoff. Doesn't mean I like her any better. But I think it was a good choice by Tini to have her head up the Royal Flush Gang. It just kind of works. I still would rather her just go away and never come back, but some people seem to like her. And at the end of the day, she actually didn't have a lot of real estate in the last couple of issues, but shows up a little bit more here. So that might be why ultimately I thought the series worked, because I actually didn't get a lot of Punchline in the last 2 issues. Like I said, this one, with the way everything wraps up, we get a little bit more of her. But yeah, glad to see her kind of disappear for a while. At the end of the day, it just seemed that the reason this story or series existed was to put her kind of as head of the Royal Flush Gang, which again I think really works quite well actually, and to set up this confrontation that she has with the Joker to kind of give us a status on what their relationship is. So I think that all works. But as far as any of the heroes having agency in this series, yeah, it doesn't really happen, but I suppose that's to be expected. The series is called Punchline, not Batman, blah, 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 whatever. And, thank God for that. But yeah, Punchline, it's not like she wins the day, but you really wouldn't say that she loses either. So, like I said, if you're looking for this story to have a nice, neat ending, everything wrapped up, either Punchline wins or Punchline loses. That's not really what happens. It's just kind of Punchline is, to borrow a line from Tom King. But yeah, the series has set her up as the head of the Royal Flush Gang and shown us what her relationship with the Joker is. Where she goes from here, we'll have to see. Can she actually work? Can she become sort of a classic enough or formidable enough or important enough villain to be included in Batman's Rogues Gallery? Right? That's what we're talking about at the end of the day. And what's interesting, she's never really gone up against Batman, at least not one-on-one. And now that she's head of the Royal Flush Gang, don't really think that she will. But I kind of think that she can't, because, and again, this goes back to my opinion on the Joker. If Batman were real and the Joker was real, Batman would beat him like 30 seconds, end of story. Joker never sees the light of day again. Punchline, it might take 10 seconds, so she's going to need that kind of role of being the puppet master, being behind the scenes, kind of manipulating things. So, yeah, she particularly good character, quality character? I don't think so. So, my doubts whether or not she can become a classic Batman's rogue villain. Um, and I'm fine with that because I'm not really a fan of the character. But I will say that I do wish that Batman. I can't think of like when you think about classic Batman villains, none of them are female, except for Catwoman. But Catwoman's not even really a villain anymore. So yeah, I mean, I do think that Batman's rogues villains could use more females just to make it more diverse and interesting, different dynamic. But no, and to be clear, and I've said this before, I'm not a fan of Catwoman as anything but a villain. Um, I don't care for the whole Bruce Selina relationship at all. Um, but that's just me. I guess Poison Ivy, maybe you could say.
Yeah.
She's not really a villain anymore either. So, God, if they try to turn Punchline into an anti-hero or an outright hero, that might be the bridge too far. Where I'm just like, no, throw up my hands and stop reading DC because yeah, she's just an awful human being. So, anyway, what were your thoughts on the series or this issue?
What really I thought this issue where the aspect of this issue that didn't work for me was Joker. This was not the Joker. The Joker doesn't talk like this. There's no way that the Joker would talk in the manner in which he talked to Punchline, the way he tolerated her insolence, the way he taught, the back talk. That's not the Joker. I remember that when the Joker and Harley talk to each other, the Joker is a control freak. The Joker, I'm not even sure, why did Joker save her? Now, that might sink. Now, if the Joker, what motive would the Joker just showed up out of nowhere. That was never explained. He just showed up. Okay, so now he's saving Punchline. Why? Okay, well, I'm gonna assume, why is he saving Punchline? Because Punchline was his girlfriend? Apparently not. I mean, they should be having sex here or something. This should be a deeply unhealthy relationship. Punchline is talking to Joker as if they had something resembling a normal relationship of some kind. That's not what that should be. Joker always has an agenda. He always has an agenda. Even when he'd come back into Harley's life, it was always to manipulate her or maybe to torment her, or he had some ulterior motive. He's got none here other than just to save Punchline and send her on her way. Also, I don't see the Joker being happy that Punchline is arguably now more popular than him. Punchline has a following in Gotham that even Batman commented on, that, there's a lot of people, a small percentage of people, a lot of people follow Punchline, but it's a small people relative to the general population of Gotham City. That's what Batman says. And it ends showing the picture of Selina Kyle and the detective that has figured out that Selina Kyle is not guilty of the murder. She shouldn't be in prison, and that there's going to be a confrontation between Catwoman and Punchline. That seems to be what this is leading to. But I didn't like the portrayal of the Joker here, and I got, unfortunately, Punchline to me is she's just another villain. That unfortunately the Joker was, in my view, badly used as nothing but a prop to create Punchline. Because Punchline, I mean, are you telling me that Punchline, did she actually feel she had an equal relationship with the Joker? That's kind of the impression you get when you hear Punchline talk about it, and she's being cocky about it, and she's putting the knife to the throat of the Joker. Seriously? Come on. Like, I mean, these writers, and I hate to say this, but it seems a lot of these women writers are so desperate to give agency to these female characters. I'm sorry, but we're talking about abusive, crazy, psychotic men. You're no match for a psychotic man. Punchline, Joker should have given her a couple of black eyes, abused her, put her in her place. Reminded her of her failures. He should be pissed off at her. He should be joking around with her. He should be toying with her. He should, that to me is, all this was done. there's even a reference here to the Joker of the man who stopped laughing. Punchline talks about the last time she saw the Joker, and the Joker says that wasn't me, suggesting it was the other one, which actually adds to the confusion because we've been trying to figure out what the hell's going on with the Rosenberg story of Joker, the man who stopped laughing to begin with. This actually adds to that confusion. But I guess she's referring to the initial bank robbery that led to that story beginning of the man who stopped laughing. But in any event, I was disappointed in that. I really wanted Punchline to stand out and be because Punchline exists for one reason, or ought to exist for only one reason, and that is as uh, as the what Harley Quinn could have been. She should be an evil Harley Quinn, as opposed to she's just another chick who wants to be a mafioso, and that's just so disappointing to me. It's a missed opportunity. But
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't know how to make her, but again, I mean, I thought that when they brought her around, um, but then again, had they made her into a female psychotic, murderer, that's not interesting to me either. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I just don't think she's a great character. So
yeah.
anyway, let's see. Up next, we have Waller versus Wildstorm #1 from writers Spencer Ackerman and Evan Narcisse. Jesus Moreno gives us some fantastic art. Vicente Cifuentes does the inks on pages 21 through 31. Mike Atea on colors. Letters from Dave Sharp. I feel like I need to read this again because it feels dense to me. It's 35 pages, I think. 30 pages, 32 pages. And I feel like I don't have a good handle on it. And for it being a Black Label, what's not out of continuity is what a scumbag Amanda Waller is. Why she wants to take out the Wildstorm universe, Wildstorm characters, I don't know. Lois comes across as lacking agency here. If there's any nitpick I have with the story, it's that. But yeah, other than that, it feels like a lot of setup to me, like a lot of setup, and I sort of struggled with it a little bit because it's a lot of it is talking head, right? It's either Amanda Waller talking to somebody, or it's Lois Lane talking to somebody, and again, credit to Jesus Moreno for keeping it visually interesting because this is very much a setup talking head issue. So we get hints as to what's going on, hints to action, but we're told about the action that's already happened. We don't get to see any of the action, or we get hints of action to come. And it is a fantastic final page, a big splash page with Deathstroke, which I'd love to see Deathstroke go up against some of the Wildstorm characters. So maybe that will go down. But yeah, right now it's too soon to say if this will work or not, because it's all set up. It's all set up, and 32 pages of setup is a lot. It's a lot. It's kind of tough at times. And yeah, when you don't get Lois Lane's characterization right, that's gonna bug me. And I don't feel like Lois has been around for decades. She's not that hard of a character to understand or to get right. I just the choices in dialogue for Lois and her Lois's like lack of confidence. I don't know. I mean, I get it. It's Black Label. It's out of continuity. This isn't the Lois I know. But
Well,
give me my recognizable character as being recognizable, so that can be my gateway in, right? Because I feel like this is Black Label, and other than Amanda Waller acting like Amanda Waller, everybody else I'm sort of feeling out like, okay, what is this version of the character like? And I certainly don't identify with Amanda Waller, thank God. But she's the only one that's acting like 100% in a recognizable fashion. So again, this might be great. It's just too soon to say. Too soon for me to know. But I'm a big fan of Jesus Moreno, and the art is fantastic. The color work is great too from Mike Atea, which not a surprise. He's impressed me on Shazam and some other work that he's done in the past. So, how about you? Did you enjoy this?
I enjoyed it a little bit more than you. I will say this. I want to say it's worth noting that that the writer, one of the co-writers, Spencer Ackerman, is an American journalist and writer focusing primarily on national security. He began his career at the New Republic in 2002 before writing for The Wire, The Guardian, and The Daily Beast. So he is an American journalist, and so and you can see that in the writing because this story takes place in the 1980s. And this is right when Lois is at the beginning of her journalist career. She's literally a newbie reporter. And she's just making a name for herself, which might account, perhaps, Jace, for one of the things that you
Yeah.
recognized could account for her lack of experience. And because I sort of picked up on that as well. And Lois herself even scolded herself at one point when she's interviewing Jackson King, who is a member of Checkmate, and he's complaining that Amanda Waller betrayed him and is taking over Checkmate and manipulating Stormwatch and taking over Checkmate. And so this is the beginning of what may be, we're guessing, this is called, after all, Waller versus Wildstorm. We've got Checkmate, we've got Stormwatch, and we got Wildstorm. So, and this is in the early 80s. And so what I like about this is we're getting a younger Lois Lane. We don't even know if we're going to get a Superman. Superman arguably maybe isn't even on the scene yet. Where's Clark Kent? Are we going to be seeing Clark Kent in this series? I don't know. We're going to be seeing a young Jimmy Olsen. I don't know. We got Steve Lombard, of all things, who is her editor, her foreign correspondent editor. And so there's a lot of things that I'm really kind of excited about, but for future issues, because as you said, there was a lot of talking heads in this issue. But I'm going to give Spencer Ackerman, and I know it's co-written here, Spencer Ackerman and Yvonne Narcisse. I think probably whenever this reminds me a little bit, a lot of, for example, when I think of a Jason Bourne movie, there's a lot of character moments. There's a lot of talking in a Jason Bourne movie. Yes, there's a lot of action, but the reason why it's a 3-hour movie is that there's a lot of talking too in espionage thrillers. There's a lot of those moments, character moments, where they're sitting. Some of the best espionage movies involve people just sitting around talking to each other, and that actually happens quite a bit here with Lois Lane going around and interviewing many people and trying to get to the bottom of things. And Jackson King, that's her big scoop. And I think Jackson King, he's got a ridiculous looking outfit, but there's definitely a story here that I'm curious to see where it leads, because I'd really like to see if this is taking place in a different continuity. Man, this would be, I hope they have some fun, because this is actually an Amanda Waller who apparently was always a bitch. She's still a little bit overweight even when she was younger, and I kind of like that. You can still see she's just a little bit. She's just as much a manipulator in the past when she's manipulating Jackson King here, and he's so angry with her, but she knows what she's doing, and she's clearly, there's more at play here. And again, I don't know where the Wildstorm is going to come into play, exactly how this is going to play out, but I'm really curious to see what's going to happen here. Because there's Lois Lane, can Superman be far behind? Maybe Superman won't show up. Maybe Clark Kent won't. But I'm actually really curious. The potential for this, and Spencer Ackerman to me he's an unknown quantity, in the espionage game. He's the wild card, and so maybe his comment with Yvonne Narcisse, I'm looking forward to this. This is an underwhelming debut issue, but I like to think this is, to use the Checkmate analogy, this is putting the chess pieces on the board, so to speak. And so I'm prepared to definitely give it another issue to see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited to see how it crossed over as well. Didn't realize it was going to be set back at Waller's beginning of her career, but as you said, once a Waller, always a Waller. Scumbag from the beginning. And 100%. If Waller gets her due, if Waller is killed in this, if Waller is, I wouldn't say murdered. If Waller is, if Waller gets what she deserves, if she's taken out as she so deserves to be, then this will be one of my favorite series. Much like what was the series where she got killed early on? The
Oh,
Joker,
that
Suicide
was
Squad.
Blaze, right? Suicide Squad, Blaze.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't Blaze. That was the one where those guys had the powers, and when one of them died, they
Right,
got
but I thought she
stronger.
died in that issue. Died in that series too.
No, it was the one where the Joker got the got the button, right? The Suicide Squad button that
Oh,
controls
right,
the bombs in
right,
the brain. It was
right.
like Joker
Get
versus
Joker. It's
Suicide.
called Get Joker.
Get Joker. That
Get
was it. Get
Joker.
Joker.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't like by any means a strong, technically put together comic or whatever, but I loved it because Amanda Waller got killed. 100%. It's all good.
Yeah.
All right. Up next and finally, Detective Comics number 1070. This is the latest in Ram V's run on Batman. We have Stefano Raphael as the artist. If that name sounds familiar, he's the one that did the recently concluded GCPD Blue Wall. Adriana Lucas does colors, Ariana Mayer on letters. Um, you know, Raphael's art worked really, really well in that GCPD Blue Wall series because there was so much realism in that. There's not a lot of realism here, so the art doesn't work as well, but he's still a great storyteller. Um, as far as the story goes, I guess the big revelation here is that Ra's al Ghul was once like a lieutenant for the Orgums, um, one of their trusted servants. There were four of them that are specifically named uh, by Talia al Ghul. Actually, she's the one that's telling Bruce about this. Um, other than that, there's not really much else that happens in this issue. To be honest with you, it sort of drags out. Um, I can't. I'm not going to say anything more than that. You can go back and listen to my thoughts on previous issues. I still have all those same thoughts. This is derivative, kind of boring. Been done before in terms of, hey, let's go back and add in a bunch of history to Gotham that we didn't know about previously. Yeah, there's just nothing compelling here. Um, I guess the one other thing I'll mention is its character Arclight shows up, who showed up in one of or other of the Lazarus Planet one shots. We know that he's a member of a team called the Vigil, and they're going to be getting their own series coming later this year in May. He's more intriguing to me in the few pages he shows up than Batman is, or Oracle, or anyone else. Talking about um, Batman needing to stop what's going on with the Orgums, and it is interesting to hear Barbara Gordon say, "Well, why don't you just stop it?" And Arclight says, "Well, because Gotham's under Batman's protection, we know Batman has rules, and we can respect that, if not necessarily abide by it. Batman needs to stop them, or we will fix this, or we will." Is so. I mean, sort of tangentially threatening Batman. That takes some cojones there, Vigil. So how powerful is this team? Or Arclight, himself, that he feels he can sort of tell Batman what to do. So kind of interesting. For me, at least the last few years, a lot of the teams that have been introduced, new teams that have been introduced, new characters, haven't really worked that well. Like, not to the point where they stick, right? Like, you can think of any number of them, except you can't really think of any number of them because they haven't really stuck. It's been a long time since DC's introduced some characters outside of the Batman books, like Ghostmaker or the aforementioned Punchline, that really have stuck and have caught on. So maybe the Vigil are those characters. Who knows? But then, other side of the coin, like I was saying earlier, DC already has more characters than they can possibly do justice to in terms of having series and telling stories. So who knows? But it was a highlight of the issue, which, to be honest, is kind of filled with lowlights, at least for me. I'm more than ready for this detective run to be over. And Ram V is somebody whose work I really admire and enjoy most of the time, but his work on Batman is just not working for me. It's morose, it's boring, just not working. Um, Sorry to say. Anyway, what did you think? Did you enjoy it more than I did?
Uh, Slightly more. Yeah, it actually, I would agree that it's sort of dragged on. This hasn't been a very well paced story. And it has been a little bit morose. But I will say that when I go back and I reread it, the pieces do kind of come together. But it's not a, I can't say it's a particularly enjoyable reread. There's something about it that feels plodding to me. But having said that, when I summarize it, here's the thing. Sometimes when I summarize a comic, I truly believe I make it sound better than it is. And I'm going to summarize this comic and I'm going to make it sound better than it actually is. Then you'll have an experience reading it straight up, in my opinion. Basically, the Orgums, they visited Gotham City in the 1800s, 1800s. And Arzen Orgum, who is Bruce Wayne's age, Arzen Orgum is now in Gotham City. And Arzen Orgum's father, every Orgum when they're born, when they come of age, they have to go on a quest to save a city or a thing. And the original King Orgum, King Orgum, he went on a quest. And he went on a quest with 4 servants, Gale, Tenclaw, Shavlot Urhead, Niang, Mudram, all these names, and Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul betrays him and he never completed his quest. And it involved Gotham City. So he couldn't save Gotham City back in the day because of Ra's al Ghul. Ra's al Ghul betrayed him. And so now Arzen Orgum, I believe, wants to redeem his father's failure or his great grandfather's failure to save Gotham City. How are they going to save Gotham? Well, apparently all the subway systems and all the caverns underneath Gotham City, you can think of them as neural pathways. And just like a brain. And this is what the Vigil was trying to tell Oracle, that you can actually draw ahead. This is, by the way, I think this is really stupid, but whatever. You can draw ahead around, you can take out a map of Gotham City and you can draw ahead on it. And then all the streets are neural pathways. And apparently there's a thalamus machine, a machine that when activated can actually somehow create, give the city some kind of sentience. And so the city itself becomes alive and can control the people in the city. And this is kind of what the Asmer is. The Asmer, this green fluid mist, controls the citizens in conjunction with this thalamus machine, this meaning will. You can take over the will of the people of Gotham and you can control it and you can have a crime-free city. And so this thalamus machine, which they're setting up in the depths of Gotham City, this is going to be Arzen Orgum's gift to Gotham, and he's going to fulfill and redeem the Orgum family by finally gifting Gotham with this thalamus machine. That's what I got out of this. And on the surface, that's kind of cool, and it's kind of silly too, because it's all premised on kind of nonsense, because as if, I mean, maybe all the caverns underneath Gotham City, maybe they're just caverns and they're not actually neural pathways. I mean, really? But you're going to create a machine that somehow magically makes them all into like a glorified brain? That's too out there for me, and that's just nonsense. But I guess you got to sort of swallow that to get it. And, but I mean, I think I kind of get the gist of it. What I don't get, and once again, you didn't bring up the backup, so I'll do the segue into the backup. I have honestly no idea. I have no idea what I don't know what happened in the backup. The backup here shows Mr. Freeze sort of trying to revive somebody who's frozen. I'm not sure if I thought at first maybe it was Oracle because they looked to be in a wheelchair.
No, it's it's the doctor from Arkham City New World Order, the one that was
really
friends with the 10-eyed man and all that. And she was in the backup last issue. The
what,
backup
the Joy? You mean Dr. Joy?
Yeah.
I thought she was African American. This one is white. This one is
maybe I'm getting confused, but she was in the last backup. She's been in previous Batman stories, worked at Arkham Asylum, is a criminal psychologist, what have you. Freeze seems to be obsessed with her, trying to experiment on her to figure out what how his cryogenics and what have you can damage people's brains, because it can't be that his beloved Nora, who he finally managed to revive, doesn't love him. It can't be that. If she's turned her back on him, it's only because the cryogenics that kept her in suspended animation for so long must have damaged her brain. She must have brain damage. There's no way that Nora could ever not love Freeze. So that was the premise last time, and he was experimenting on this woman. And then for some reason that's unexplained, she manifests, or this character named Earworm manifests itself and is talking to her and kind of keeping her sane throughout these experiments, which could also be described as torturous. Um, and when things go too far, Freeze calls himself an imbecile and gets all mad and throws a tantrum because he thinks he's accidentally frozen her and killed her. And he goes running off. Earworm shows up and kind of thaws her out and saves her, I guess. It's kind of hard to follow. Um, Casper Wingard's art is a bit kind of ethereal, and so that makes it kind of hard to follow as well.
Yeah.
And Ty Spreer's never been a writer who
Well,
um,
yeah,
whose
you
stuff is
described.
super
Yeah, you
super
described the
clear.
last backup though. That's not this backup.
No, that is this backup.
No, this guy's Sorrow. Is not his name is Sorrow. This guy who shows up. He says, "Call me Sorrow."
No, keep going. No, keep going. You haven't got to the part where the earworm guy shows up yet. He shows up after that. The Sorrow guy. I don't know what's going on with the Sorrow guy, but if you keep going,
That's it before.
uh,
You mean it?
she starts thawing out. Oh, right at the. Oh yeah, before. You're right. Before. Um, but yeah, his name is Sorrow. I'm here to help. I don't know if he's the avatar of Earworm or what have you. Like, that's not
Right.
explained at all. Who the Sorrow
Yeah.
guy is at all. But when
Yeah.
she gets thawed out, that's Earworm. Um, so yeah, but I was going to say, other than, if you recall, Cy Spurrier did that like 2-issue Justice League fill-in,
Yeah.
um, in between Bendis's run and Joshua Williamson killing them all. We put that Death of Justice League 75, blah blah blah. No one died.
Yeah.
But Cy Spurrier, he did a 2-issue Justice League, and it was like the most sort of standard comic book superhero thing that he's ever done. There was no weirdness. There was no crazy art.
Yeah.
It
I
almost didn't seem like it was Cy Spurrier doing it. This is Cy Spurrier. Weird, out there, can't really understand what's going on. Yeah.
I
And he's
I
on Flash, so yay.
I just, in fairness, this is I feel sorry. I
Feel sorrow?
I feel sorry for Simon Spurrier because I can't imagine that he intends this story to be this confusing, because I don't know what's going on. I know what doctor you're talking about. I know that Ram V has said in interviews that he's using that storyline that you've talked about with the Dr. Joy, whatever her name is, from what was that 10? I don't even know what the word. I can't remember the name of the series, but I mean
New World Order.
the what?
New World Order.
The
Arkham City, New World Order.
Arkham World, New World Order. Yeah, okay.
Dan Waters.
Dan Waters, right? But that was. This is really, really confusing, and Simon Spurrier is just not. I mean, if this is the way, my fear is that when he's writing Flash, like Simon Spurrier this should not be this difficult to understand what's going on here and relate this to the main narrative. It's just it's nothing. I mean, it's confusing, and the art doesn't do it any justice. I really seriously hope that the Flash is nothing even remotely close to this, because this is extremely worrisome. This is extremely worrisome. I mean, the main narrative is can be challenging enough, but this backup is not doing the series any favors whatsoever. So I really hope the Flash is much more straightforward than whatever he's trying to do with the backups here in Detective Comics, because man, this pads the narrative and adds to the price point of the comic, and it's not doing this series any favors at all. I mean, it would actually be better if it didn't exist, because frankly, because it's adding nothing to the narrative that I can see. Anyways, but at least you understand better what's going on than me. But whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I don't know. I don't want to badmouth anybody's work, but
Yeah.
I don't get. Yeah, I mean, I understand what's going on. It's just, unfortunately, it's just not very good or interesting. So, man, I can't remember the last time I was enjoying Detective Comics this little. But Action Comics is back to being really good.
That's right.
Can you recall the last time Action and Detective were both good?
Yeah,
Maybe at the beginning of Rebirth, right?
yep.
When Jurgens was back on action and James Tynion was doing the Bat Family stuff in Detective, that was pretty
Yeah.
solid. So yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
Uh, all right, so that does it for the individual books that we're going to talk about. Also, DC Ruby RWBY issue 2 is out. Blue Beetle Graduation Day has its Spanish edition, which is selling really, really well. The Spanish edition is outselling the regular edition, which is fantastic. There's also some trades this week from DC. We've got Task Force Z Volume 2, What's Eating You? Obviously, that concludes the Matthew Rosenberg final 6 issues of that series. Naomi Season 2 has a hardcover collecting Naomi Season 2 1 through 6 from Bendis and Walker, Jamal Campbell art. Rocky was a huge fan of that series, if I recall.
That's sarcasm.
Maybe not. Yeah, sarcasm. I Am Batman Volume 2, Welcome to New York, collects I Am Batman numbers 6 through 10. Rocky and I both felt after the first 5 issues being in Gotham, getting Jace Fox out of Gotham, putting him in New York, giving him a lot more agency, just improved that series tremendously. So we actually do recommend that. And then Infinite Frontier, which collects one of the lead-up series to Dark Crisis, even though Dark Crisis really kind of was a wah-wah. 0 through 6 of Infinite Frontier and Infinite Frontier Secret Files are contained here. I found the lead, like looking back with the knowledge of how Dark Crisis basically did nothing. It's kind of easy to say now that the actual lead-up series, there were multiple lead-up series to Dark Crisis on Infinite were actually better and more entertaining. And I kind of wish that a lot of the stuff that was in these Prelude series was paid off in a better fashion, in a more meaningful fashion, I guess you'd say, than we actually got. But regardless, check it out. If you're so inclined. Like I said, it does collect all 6 issues of Infinite Frontier, or 7 issues really, because you get a 0 all the way up through 6, and the Infinite Frontier Secret Files. So those are the collections that are out this week from DC. Book of the week, Rocky, what do you got?
Oh man, let me see. That's a tough one. Well, I hadn't really put much thought into that. I would have to go with, man. I think I'm gonna have to go with. I was underwhelmed all across the board, but well, you know what? No, I'm gonna go with Tom King's Gotham City Year 1. Year 1. I have to go with that. And I know sometimes we pick the same ones, man, but that was the one
that's it. Yeah, there's no other. I mean, I thought that Dark Knights of Steel, my favorite issue so far. I thought Doom Patrol was a great start. Stargirl's been pretty solid throughout, but it's not really a contest this week. Head and shoulders above everything else. I kind of feel similar about this week as I did the week that the final issue of Human Target came out, also by Tom King. It's just this stands out as so much better than everything else that came out this week. And there were some other good comics.
Yeah.
This was a great comic. This was a great series. It was great art. It was impactful. It was emotional. It said something. And it was a celebration of crime noir, which I know Tom is a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And as the overall series, as an homage to the genre of crime noir, is a masterpiece. So I can't, regardless, like you said, sometimes I'll kind of change mine if I'm vacillating between two, or I'll choose, something else. But I can't choose in good conscience. I can't choose anything else but Gotham City Year 1. Absolutely fantastic.
But if I was to pick something in the mainstream DC universe, I would go with Action Comics. I would go with Action Comics as a runner-up.
Okay, that's solid. Yeah.
So
yeah, very, very good issue of Action as well. So anyway, that's going to do it, everybody. Again, apologies for it coming out a few days late. Totally 100% on me. But good thing I'm not traveling for the foreseeable future, at least probably not until May for work. So we should be back to the regular schedule starting next week. Appreciate everybody's support as always. Don't forget, if you're listening to us on the audio only, head over to YouTube, Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom! ! Subscribe, ring the notification bell, leave some comments. you know what to do. Really helps out with the algorithm and us getting views, which then leads to more access and all that kind of good stuff. So appreciate that. If you did stumble across us on YouTube, you're curious about the other audio content from the Comic Source, just go to wherever you get your podcast, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I know it was a long one, 14 books. So we appreciate you sticking with us to the end, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.